Hey everyone, and welcome. Today, we're embarking on a journey not just across miles, but across time itself. We're heading to the American Southwest, to a place where the very stones seem to breathe with memory. Mesa Verde, Colorado. Imagine a world bathed in the warm, golden light of a setting sun. Picture bust silent mesas stretching out beneath an endless sky, their flat tops etched against the horizon. Below them, monumental cliffs of red gold sandstone stand like ancient sentinels, guarding secrets centuries old. This is the landscape of Mesa Verde, a name that translates to green table, a nod to the pinyon and juniper forests that cloak its surface. But the real magic of this place isn't just in its breathtaking scenery. It's in what lies nestled within the protective embrace of these cliffs. Look closer into the deep alcoves and shadowy recesses. There, you'll find a city carved from stone, a civilization frozen in time. It's a world where every wall, every doorway, tells a story. The Ancestral Pueblo people who lived here more than 700 years ago left behind not just structures, but a profound legacy etched into the very rock. As you stand here, a profound stillness settles over you. The wind whispers through the canyons, carrying echoes of the past. You can almost hear the distant sounds of children playing, the murmur of conversations, the rhythmic grinding of corn on stone. It's a place that feels simultaneously ancient and alive, a testament to human ingenuity and resilience. The air is clear, the silence is deep, and the connection to the past is palpable. This is more than just an archaeological site. It's a sacred space. The cliffs seem to sleep, cradling the homes of a people who lived in harmony with this rugged, beautiful land. For centuries, these dwellings remained hidden, their stories waiting patiently to be rediscovered. It's a world where stone holds memory, where the past is not just something you read about in a booklet, something you can reach out and touch. Join me as we step out of our world and into theirs. We'll walk the ancient pathways, peer into the ceremonial kivas, and stand in the very rooms where families gathered for generations. We're going to explore the quiet majesty of these sleeping cliffs and try to understand the people who called this extraordinary place home. This is the story of Mesa Verde, a city in the sky. As we delve deeper, you'll see how these structures were more than just shelters. They were communities, centers of culture, and astronomical observatories, all ingeniously integrated into the natural landscape. Think about the skill and determination it took. Every block of sandstone was shaped by hand, every timber hauled from miles away, all without the help of modern tools or beasts of burden. It is a staggering achievement that speaks volumes about their connection to this land and to each other. The cliffs provided protection from the elements, and perhaps from other groups. In summer, the high alcoves offered shade from the relentless sun. In winter, they captured the low-angled sunlight, providing warmth. It was a brilliant adaptation, a partnership with nature. Life here was challenging, but it was also rich with purpose and community. As the sun dips lower, painting the cliffs in fiery shades of orange, crimson, and deep purple, the sense of timelessness intensifies. You feel like a guest in a silent, enduring kingdom. The shadows lengthen, filling the empty doorways and plazas, and for a moment, the line between past and present blurs completely. It's a powerful, humbling experience that stays with you long after you've left. This is just the beginning of our exploration. In the coming episodes, we'll uncover the secrets of the most famous cliff dwellings, like Cliff Palace and Balcony House. We'll learn about the daily lives of the people, their art, their beliefs, and the enduring mystery of why they suddenly left this magnificent home. The story of Mesa Verde is a grand, sweeping epic, and we've only just turned the first page. Thank you so much for joining me on this first chapter of our journey into the heart of the American Southwest. If you're as captivated by this incredible place as I am, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe so you don't miss what's coming next. We have so much more to discover together. See you in the next video. Imagine this. It's the late 1800s. The American West is still a vast, untamed frontier. For cowboys like Richard Wetherell and Charlie Mason, life revolved around the rhythm of the seasons, the dust of the trail, and the constant challenge of managing their cattle herds across the sprawling mesas and deep canyons of southwestern Colorado. Their world was one of hard work, grit, and the raw, breathtaking beauty of the landscape. But they were about to stumble upon something that would not only change their lives but also rewrite a significant chapter of American history. It all started on a cold, snowy day in December 1888. Wetherell and his brother-in-law, Charlie Mason, were riding along the edge of Mesa Verde, searching for stray cattle that had wandered off from the main herd. The snow was thick on the ground, making the already difficult terrain even more treacherous. As they scanned the opposite canyon wall, the afternoon sun broke through the clouds, illuminating the cliff face in a way they had never seen before. And there, nestled within a massive alcove, was something truly astonishing. It wasn't a natural formation. Peeking out from under the protective overhang of the cliff was what looked like a small city, frozen in time. Towers, walls, and rooms, all meticulously crafted from stone and mud, rose several stories high. It was a silent, stone metropolis, sheltered from the elements for centuries. They stared in disbelief. Who could have built such a place? And where had they gone? They knew they had found something extraordinary. They decided to name it Cliff Palace. This single moment of discovery was the spark that would ignite a firestorm of interest in the ancient peoples of the American Southwest. This wasn't their first encounter with ancient ruins. The Wetherell family had been living in the Mancos Valley for years and were familiar with the smaller sites and pottery sherds scattered across the landscape. They called the mysterious people who left them behind the ancients. But Cliff Palace was on a completely different scale. It was a revelation. It wasn't just a few scattered rooms. It was a complex, integrated community. It spoke of a sophisticated society, a culture that had thrived in this challenging environment long before any European set foot on the continent. Driven by a mix of cowboy, curiosity, and a burgeoning sense of historical importance, the Wetherells and other local ranchers began to explore these cliff dwellings more systematically. Over the next few years, they would discover hundreds of similar sites tucked away in the canyons of Mesa Verde, including other large settlements they named Spruce Tree House and Balcony House. Each discovery was a new piece of an epic puzzle. They found perfectly preserved rooms, some still containing tools, pottery, and even woven sandals. It was as if the inhabitants had simply walked away one day, leaving everything behind. The Wetherells weren't trained archaeologists. That field barely existed in America at the time. They were cattlemen, but their passion for these ruins was undeniable. They began collecting artifacts, not for profit, but out of a genuine desire to understand and preserve the story of this lost civilization. They guided visitors, including journalists and the first wave of professional archaeologists, into the canyons, sharing their discoveries with a world that was largely unaware of the deep history lying hidden in its own backyard. One of these early visitors was a Swedish scholar named Gustav. Arriving in 1891, he was the first person to apply scientific methods to the study of the Mesa Verde sites. He meticulously photographed, mapped, and excavated several of the dwellings. Nordenskjolds' work resulted in the first comprehensive book on the cliff dwellings, The Cliff Dwellers of the Mesa Verde. While his methods were advanced for the time, his decision to ship a large collection of artifacts back to Sweden caused a major controversy. This controversy, however, had an important silver lining. It highlighted the urgent need to protect these incredible sites from looting and uncontrolled digging. The public outcry over the loss of these artifacts helped fuel a national conversation about heritage preservation. It became clear that these ruins weren't just local curiosities. They were a national treasure, a vital link to America's pre-Columbian past. The discoveries made by those cowboys searching for lost cattle directly led to the creation of Mesa Verde National Park in 1906 by President Theodore Roosevelt, ensuring that these magnificent structures would be protected for all future generations. The term Anasazi, a Navajo word often translated as ancient enemies, was initially used by the West and later adopted by archaeologists to describe the people who built the cliff dwellings. However, today, we understand that this term is not what these people called themselves, and their descendants, the modern Pueblo peoples of Arizona and New Mexico, prefer T-term Ancestral Pueblo. Their oral traditions tell stories of migrations, of clans, journeying from one place to another, and these cliff dwellings are a powerful, physical testament to that history. So, the next time you think about the discovery of ancient sites, remember the story of the Wetherell brothers. It wasn't an academic in a university hall, but a pair of rugged cowboys on a snowy winter day who pulled back the curtain on one of North America's greatest archaeological wonders. Their quest for lost cattle led them to a lost world, and in doing so, they forever changed our understanding of the deep and complex history of the land we call America. They were the unlikely pioneers who opened the door to the past, and we are all richer for it. Thank you so much for joining me on this journey into the canyons of time. If you found this story as fascinating as I do, please hit that like button, subscribe for more explorations into our shared past, and ring that notification bell so you don't miss our next chapter. We'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Until next time, keep exploring. Imagine, for a moment, you're standing at the bottom of a vast, sun-drenched canyon. You crane your neck, looking up, and there, nestled high in a massive alcove, carved into the sheer sandstone cliff, is a city. Not a ruin, but a living, breathing city. Hundreds of feet above the canyon floor. It seems impossible, like a mirage shimmering in the desert heat. But this was reality. This was home for a remarkable civilization. Welcome back to our journey through the ancient world. Today, we're venturing into the heart of the American Southwest to uncover the story of the Ancestral Puebloans, a people who truly built a civilization in the sky. For a long time, they were known by another name, the Anasazi. But today we honor them by the name their descendants prefer. These were not just builders. They were astronomers, farmers, artists, and engineers of the highest order, who thrived for over 1,000 years in one of North America's most challenging landscapes. So, how did they do it? How did they construct these breathtaking cliff dwellings? And more importantly, why? What was life like, suspended between the earth and the sky? And what led them to eventually walk away from these magnificent homes, leaving them silent for centuries? Let's climb into the past and explore the incredible world of the Ancestral Pueblo. Their story begins not in the cliffs, but on the mesas and in the valleys below. Around 1500 BCE, for centuries, they were semi-nomadic, masters of a difficult environment. They were expert basket weavers, so much so that archaeologists call this early period the basket maker era. But slowly, something began to change. They started to settle down, cultivating the three sisters: corn, beans, and squash. This agricultural revolution was the foundation upon which their entire civilization would be built. With a stable food source, their population grew, and Ninjihav communities blossomed. They began building more permanent homes, first as simple pit houses, dug in tuzas, and later as multi-room pueblos, made of adobe and stone, rising from the canyon floors. Places like Chaco Canyon in New Mexico became a major cultural center. It was a sprawling network of monumental great houses, perfectly aligned with solar and lunar cycles. Chaco was the beating heart of their world, a center for trade, ceremony, and knowledge, connected by a system of roads that stretched for hundreds of miles across the desert. For hundreds of years, this was Njihav world. They were masters of the mesa tops and canyon bottoms. Their society was complex, their art was sophisticated, and their understanding of the cosmos was profound. But then, around the year 1150 CE, they started to look up. They began to move, in one of the most architectural shifts in human history. They started vacating their established towns, and began the colossal task of building new homes, directly into the faces of the cliffs. Why? The exact reasons are still debated by archaeologists, but there are several compelling theories. One of the strongest is defense. As populations grew, resources may have become scarcer, leading to increased competition and conflict. A cliff dwelling is a natural fortress. With a single, controlled point of entry, a small group of defenders could easily protect the community from outsiders. It was a secure, defensible position that offered unparalleled safety. Another reason was likely environmental. The climate of the Southwest is one of extremes. By building within the deep alcoves of the cliffs, they created a passively heated and cooled environment. Zastong Obahangu, an umbrella from the brutal summer sun, keeping Enji homes cool. In the winter, the low-angled sun would shine directly into the alcove, warming the stone, which would then radiate heat throughout the cold night. It was brilliant, sustainable architecture, perfectly in tune with nature. It also gave them a distinct advantage for farming. The canyon floors, where they grew their crops, were prone to flash floods. By living up in the cliffs, they were safe from these sudden dangers, while still being close to their fields, and crucial to the seeps and springs that often emerged from the same rock layer where they built their homes, providing a reliable source of water. So, let's picture what it took to build one of these cliff palaces, like Cliff Palace at Mesa Verde, which had over 150 rooms. The work was monumental. Every single block of sandstone had to be quarried, shaped with stone tools, and carried to the construction site. Every wooden beam, some weighing hundreds of pounds, had to be harvested from miles away, carried to the canyon rim, and then painstakingly lowered down the cliff face. Then came the construction itself. Masons, balanced on rudimentary scaffolding, would carefully place the stones, cementing them together with a mortar of mud and water. They built multi-story towers, circular ceremonial rooms called kivas, and open plazas, all hundreds of feet in the air. Imagine the sheer courage, skill, and communal effort required. This wasn't the work of a few. It was the work of an entire community, united in a single, awe-inspiring purpose. What was daily life like in these vertical villages? It was a life of constant climbing. To get to their homes, they used a series of hand and toe holds carved directly into the rock face, sometimes supplemented with simple wooden ladders. A misstep could be fatal. Children would have learned to navigate these vertical paths from a very young age. Inside, the community was tightly knit. Families lived in clusters of rooms, sharing walls and plazas. The days were filled with activity. Women would grind corn on stone metates, cook meals, and craft beautiful black-on-white pottery. Men would tend to the fields below, hunt in the surrounding mesas, and maintain the village structures. The plazas would have been hubs of social life, filled with the sounds of children playing, dogs barking, and people talking. At the heart of their spiritual life were the kiva. These circular, subterranean rooms were entered from the roof by a ladder, symbolizing a journey back into the underworld from which their ancestors were said to have emerged. Here, in the flickering light of a central fire, clans would gather for ceremonies, councils would meet, and knowledge would be passed down through generations. The kiva was the spiritual anchor of the entire village. For about 150 years, this civilization in the sky flourished. From Mesa Verde in Colorado to Canyon de Chelly in Arizona, the Ancestral Puebloans left their indelible mark on the landscape. But then, as quickly as it began, it ended. By the year 1300, virtually all of the cliff dwellings of the Four Corners region were empty. The great mystery is, what happened? Why did they leave? There was no single cause, but rather a perfect storm of factors. The most significant was a prolonged, severe drought that began in the late 1200s. Trailing data shows that for over 2 decades, rainfall was ecally low. Crops failed, springs dried up, and a society built on agriculture was pushed to the brink of collapse. This environmental stress likely led to social and religious upheaval. When the rains fail and the corn withers, people begin to question their leaders and their spiritual beliefs. There's evidence of increased conflict and social instability during this period. After generations of success, their world was beginning to unravel, and so they made a difficult choice. They decided to leave. It wasn't a sudden disappearance or a mysterious vanishing. It was a deliberate, planned migration. They packed what they could carry, sealed the doorways to their homes, and walked away. They moved south and east towards a more reliable water source, the Rio Grande Valley in New Mexico, and the Hopi Mesas in Arizona. They didn't vanish, they evolved. They became the ancestors of the modern Pueblo peoples who live in the region today. Like the Hopi Zuni and the many Pueblos of New Mexico, their story didn't end. A new chapter began. Today, places like Mesa Verde National Park stand as silent, breathtaking monuments to their ingenuity and resilience. To walk through these ancient homes is to feel a profound connection to the past. You can almost hear the echoes of their lives in the canyon winds. The story of the Ancestral Puebloans is a powerful reminder that civilizations are not just made of stone and mortar, but of people. People who, faced with immense challenges, adapted, innovated, and ultimately endured. Leaving behind a legacy continues to inspire and humble us to this day. Thank you so much for joining me on this incredible journey into the sky. If you found this story as fascinating as I do, please give this video a thumbs up. And do forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you don't miss our next adventure. We've got so much more of the past to explore together. Until next time, stay curious. Welcome back to our journey through time. Today, in Chapter 4, The Builders of Stone and Spirit, we delve into the very origins of the incredible people who crafted the cliff dwellings of Mesa Verde. Who were they, and where did they come from? The story doesn't begin in these canyons. It starts hundreds of miles to the south, in the vast, sun-drenched landscape of what is now New Mexico. Imagine a bustling cultural center, a true metropolis of its time. Chaco Canyon. For centuries, this was the heart of the Ancestral Puebloan world. Here, they constructed monumental great houses, multi-story structures aligned with celestial events, connected by an extensive network of roads. Chaco was a hub of ceremony, trade, and innovation. The pottery, the weaving, the agricultural techniques all reached a zenith here. It was a society deeply connected to the cosmos and to each other. But around the mid-11th and into the 12th century, something began to change. The vibrant life in Chaco Canyon started to wane. Archaeologists point to a confluence of factors, with a prolonged and severe drought being a primary catalyst. The delicate balance they had maintained with their environment was tipping. Resources grew scarce. The agricultural systems that supported thousands began to fail, and social structures likely came under immense strain. It was time for a great migration, a dispersal of people carrying their culture, knowledge, and spirit with them. They didn't just vanish, they moved, journeying northward in smaller groups, and one of their primary destinations was the Mesa Verde region. This wasn't an empty land. It was a place their ancestors had known, but now it was to become a new home, a new center for their civilization. They brought with them the accumulated wisdom of generations, the masterful masonry skills honed in Chaco, the deep understanding of astronomy, and the complex social and ceremonial traditions. When you look at the early structures here in Mesa Verde, you can see the direct lineage from Chaco, the meticulous stonework, the T-shaped doorways, the circular kivistes or architectural signatures carried across the landscape. They weren't simply replicating their old homes, they were adapting. The environment at Mesa Verde was different. It was a high plateau, dissected by deep canyons with sheltered alcoves and seasonal water sources. This new landscape demanded new solutions. Their architectural genius began to evolve. Instead of sprawling great houses on the canyon floor, they started building on the mesa tops, closer to their farms of corn, beans, and squash. They perfected techniques for collecting and storing water, a precious resource in this arid land. Their communities, while perhaps smaller than the grand scale of Chaco, were intricate so you can trace this evolution in the stone itself. The early Pueblo structures on the mesa top are robust, well built. But over time, you see an increasing refinement. The stones are more carefully shaped, the courses are more regular, and the walls are stronger. They were learning from the land, responding to its challenges and opportunities. This wasn't just construction, it was a conversation between a people and their environment. These early builders were laying the groundwork, quite literally, for the spectacular chapter that was to follow. They were experimenting, innovating, and transforming their Chacan heritage into something uniquely suited to Mesa Verde. The spirit of community, the reverence for the natural world, and the drive to create and meaningful spaces, all of this was being cemented into the foundations of their new society. This period of migration and adaptation, from the late 11th through the 12th century, is crucial. It is the bridge between the monumental world of Chaco and the dramatic cliff dwellings we associate with Mesa Verde. The people were not just building with stone, they were rebuilding their world, infusing the rock with their spirit, their history, and their hopes for the future. Think about the immense courage and resilience this migration required, to leave a place that had been the center of your universe for centuries, and venture into new territories to begin again. It speaks volumes about their adaptability and strength. They carried their culture not in written books, but in their minds, their hands, and their ceremonies. As we stand here, surrounded by the remnants of these mesa-top villages, we are looking at a society in transition. They were taking the architectural language they knew and learning to speak it in a new dialect, one dictated by the cliffs and canyons of their new home. The round kivas, the heart of their ceremonial life, remained a constant, a spiritual anchor, connecting them to their past, even as they forged a new future. The stage was now set. The population was growing. Their building skills were reaching new heights, and they had mastered life on the Green Mesa. But another shift was coming, a move that would define their legacy forever, the move into the cliffs themselves. Why did they make this dramatic change? That is the story we will explore in our next chapter. Thank you for joining me on this exploration of the builders of stone and spirit. Their journey is a powerful testament to human ingenuity and endurance. If you're enjoying this series, please consider liking this video and subscribing to the channel for more journeys into the past. Your support helps us continue to tell these incredible stories. We'll see you next time. Have you ever looked at a picture of the incredible cliff dwellings at Mesa Verde and wondered why? Why would anyone build their homes in such a precarious, hard-to-reach place? It's a question that has fascinated archaeologists and historians for over a century. For hundreds of years, the Ancestral Pueblo people thrived in villages built on the flat tops of the mesas, farming corn, beans, and squash. Life seemed stable. Then, around the late 1100s, a massive, society-wide shift occurred. Over just a few generations, they moved from their comfortable mesa-top homes into elaborate stone cities built into sheltered alcoves, high on the cliff faces. This wasn't just a small group deciding to try something new. It was a major migration, a fundamental change in their way of life. Today, we're going to explore the leading theories behind this monumental move. Was it for protection? A response to a changing environment? Or were there deeper, spiritual reasons at play? Let's journey back in time and investigate the great mystery of why they moved into the cliffs. One of the most popular and long-standing theories is defense. Imagine living on an open mesa top. While it offers great views, it also leaves you exposed. As populations grew throughout the Four Corners region, so did competition for resources like water, farmland, and game. Archaeological evidence from this period, around the 12th and 13th centuries, shows an increase in societal stress. We see signs of conflict settlements with defensive walls, watchtowers, and even evidence of violent encounters. Now, picture a cliff dwelling. They are natural fortresses, tucked into massive rock alcoves. They often have only one or two narrow, easily defendable access points. Some entrances were so difficult to reach, they required a series of hand-and toe holds carved directly into the cliff face, or complex wooden ladders that could be pulled up in case of an attack. From these high vantage points, lookouts could spot enemies approaching from miles away. Building their homes in these alcoves created a secure, consolidated community, a safe haven in an increasingly uncertain world. It centralized the population, making it easier to organize a collective defense against any potential raiders. The logic is compelling. When faced with growing threats, the Ancestral Puebloans literally built their security into the landscape. But defense might not be the whole story. We also have to consider the climate. The lives of these ancient farmers were intricately tied to the weather. Their survival depended on predictable rainfall for their crops. Trailing data, an amazing scientific tool that gives us a year-by-year record of past climate conditions, reveals a dramatic story. Starting in the mid-1100s and intensifying into the 1200s, the region was hit by a series of severe and prolonged droughts. The reliable summer monsoons became less reliable. Shorter growing seasons and unpredictable rainfall would have made farming on the sun-baked mesa tops incredibly difficult. The soil would have dried out, and harvests would have failed, leading to food shortages and famine. So, how would moving into the cliffs help? It's all about microclimates. The massive sandstone alcoves provided shelter from the elements. In Tesumer, the overhanging rock offered shade from the scorching sun, keeping the dwellings cool and reducing water evaporation. In the winter, the low-angled sun would shine directly into the alcoves, warming the stone, which would then radiate heat throughout the night, acting like a natural storage heater. Furthermore, many of these alcoves had seeps, natural springs where water trickles out of the rock. This provided a more reliable, albeit limited, source of water, sheltered from the evaporative power of the sun and wind. By moving into the cliffs, the Puebloans weren't just finding a defensible home, they were finding a more stable and survivable environment in the face of a changing, harsher climate. Beyond the practical reasons of defense and climate, we must also consider the profound role of spirituality and cosmology in their lives. For the ancestral Puebloans, and for their modern descendants, the landscape itself is sacred. Their worldview was, and is, deeply interwoven with the natural world and the cosmos. The cliffs, the springs, the sun, and the sky were not just resources, they were living parts of their spiritual universe. Moving into the cliffs may have been a deeply symbolic act. The alcoves, shaped like a great arching bowl, could be seen as representing the sky or the dome of the heavens. Living within the body of Mother Earth, in Tisa womb-like shelters, could have held immense spiritual significance. It brought them closer to the sources of life, the life-giving water seeping from the rock and the warmth of the sun. The layout of many cliff dwellings also seems to align with celestial events. For example, certain windows and openings are perfectly positioned to capture the light of the sun on the winter or summer solstice, marking important dates in their ceremonial calendar. This wasn't just architecture, it was a physical expression of their cosmology, a way of living in harmony with the cycles of the sun, moon, and stars. This move might have been a spiritual quest, a way to reinforce their connection to the sacred world, and to seek favor from the spiritual forces that govern their existence, especially during a time of great stress and change. So, which theory is correct? Was it defense, climate, or spirituality? The most likely answer is that it wasn't just one of these things, but a complex interplay of all three. Imagine the situation they faced. Increasing social conflict and competition made their exposed mesa-top villages feel unsafe. At the same time, a worsening climate made farming difficult and threatened their very survival. In the face of such immense pressure, a spiritual crisis would have been inevitable. Their traditional ways of life were failing. This convergence of factors likely created the perfect storm, a powerful motivation to seek a radical new solution. The cliff alcoves offered an answer to all their problems at once. They were incredibly defensible, providing security from enemies. They offered shelter from the harsh climate, with more stable temperatures and access to precious water, and they held deep spiritual meaning, providing a way to live in closer harmony with the sacred powers of the earth and sky. The move into the cliffs wasn't a retreat. It was a brilliant and multifaceted adaptation. It was a strategic, practical, and spiritual response to a world in turmoil, a testament to the resilience and ingenuity of the ancestral Pueblo people. The era of the great cliff dwellings, however, was relatively short. After flourishing for less than a century in these spectacular cliffside cities, the ancestral Puebloans moved again. By the year 1300, the entire Mesa Verde region was largely abandoned. They migrated south, east, and west, two places that would become the homes of the modern Pueblo peoples of Arizona and New Mexico today. This final migration is another great mystery, tied to a massive drought in the late 1200s and continued social pressures, but the legacy of their time in the cliffs remains etched into the sandstone. These breathtaking structures are not ruins of a lost civilization, but the homes of the ancestors of people who are still here today. The cliff dwellings stand as a powerful reminder of a people who, when faced with immense challenges, looked to the landscape and found an ingenious and beautiful way to survive. They remind us of the complex reasons people make dramatic changes and the deep connections between culture, environment, and the human spirit. Thank you so much for joining me on this journey into the past. The story of the ancestral Puebloans is a rich and fascinating one, and we've only scratched the surface. What do you think was the primary reason for the move? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed this exploration and want to learn more about the mysteries of ancient cultures, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. Your support helps us continue to bring these incredible stories to light. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next chapter of history. Ever stood at the base of a towering cliff and wondered, how did they even do that? Welcome back, explorers. Today, we're journeying deep into the heart of ancient ingenuity, uncovering the architectural secrets of the cliff dwellers. This isn't just about stacking stones. It's a story of survival, community, and engineering genius, all accomplished without a single modern machine. So, grab your virtual hard hat, and let's delve into the incredible world of ancient construction. Look closely at these walls. Each block you see wasn't cut by a laser or a diamond-tipped saw. It was hand-hewn, carved directly from the sandstone cliffs. Imagine the sheer labor involved. The Ancestral Puebloans would find natural fractures in the rock, then painstakingly use harder stones and wooden wedges to quarry these massive blocks. They would shape them, one by one, feeling the grain of the stone, understanding its strengths and weaknesses. It was an intimate dance between the builder and the mountain. Each block tells a story of patience, strength, and a deep connection to the earth itself. They didn't just see a cliff, they saw a home, a quarry, and a sanctuary, all in one. The precision they achieved with such simple tools is nothing short of breathtaking. It's a testament to the idea that, with enough time and determination, human hands can shape the very landscape around them. Now, what holds these hand-cut stones together? It's not cement from a bag. This is a special mix, a recipe perfected over generations. A mortar made of mud, water, and sometimes ash or small pebbles for strength. Think of it as ancient concrete. The builders would gather soil, carefully selecting the right consistency, mixing it with water to create a thick, pliable paste. This mud mortar did more than just bind the stones. It also acted as a sealant, filling every crack and crevice to keep out the wind, rain, and desert critters. You can still see the handprints and fingerprints of the original masons preserved in the dried mortar, and some places a direct, tangible link to the people who lived here 1,000 years ago. It's an incredibly personal touch, a signature left by the architects of this ancient world, reminding us that these magnificent structures were built by families, by communities, by people just like us. Getting around in a vertical village is a challenge. There were no elevators or escalators here. The solution was simple, yet effective. Ladders. But these weren't your average hardware store ladders. They were crafted from sturdy ponderosa pine or juniper trees, felled with stone axes and shaped by hand. Imagine climbing one of these, with a basket of corn on your back, ascending from the canyon floor to your home perched hundreds of feet up. Ladders connected different levels, or kivas, and provided access to rooftop terraces, which served as the communal plazas of their time. These weren't just tools, they were the arteries of the community, the pathways that connected homes and families. The placement of a ladder could determine whether a space was public or private. It was a dynamic system that required agility, balance, and a complete lack of fear of heights. It truly makes you appreciate the physical fitness and daily courage of the people who called these cliffs home. Look up at the ceilings, or what remains of them. Those massive wooden beams spanning the rooms are called vigas. These timbers were the structural backbone of their multi-story homes. Harvesting them was a monumental task. The Ancestral Puebloans had to travel for miles, sometimes into the high country, to find trees large and straight enough. Using only stone axes, they would chop them down, strip the bark, and then haul these incredibly heavy logs back to the cliff alcove. How did they get them up the cliff face? It's a question that still puzzles archaeologists, but it likely involved a combination of brute force, ropes made from yucca fiber, and an incredible amount of teamwork. On-seine plays, smaller crossbeams called letilas were laid over the viga, and the entire structure was covered with mud and clay to create a sturdy floor for the level above, or a roof to keep out the elements. This multi-layered system was incredibly strong and an amazing feat of logistics and engineering. One of the most brilliant aspects of these dwellings is something you can't see, but you can definitely feel. The natural ventilation. The Ancestral Puebloans were masters of passive climate control. They built their homes in south-facing alcoves for a reason. In the winter, the low angle of the sun would shine deep into the alcove, warming the thick stone walls. These walls would then act like a giant thermal battery, absorbing the heat during the day and slowly releasing it at night, keeping the homes warm and cozy. In the summer, when the sun is high in the sky, the cliff overhang would cast a deep shadow over the village, keeping it cool and comfortable, like a giant, natural air conditioner. Small, strategically placed windows and doorways would create cross breezes, pulling cool air from the shaded lower levels and venting hot air out through the top. This sophisticated understanding of solar orientation and airflow created a comfortable living environment. Yet, all without using a single watt of electricity. It's sustainable design in its purest, most ancient form. Let's put it all together. Hand-hewn stones, mixed by hand, mud mortar, hand-carved ladders, and massive wooden beams hauled for miles, all assembled with a perfect understanding of the natural environment. This wasn't just building. It was an act of adaptation and integration. They didn't conquer the landscape. They collaborated with it. Every single element, from the placement of a window to the thickness of a wall, was a deliberate choice, born from centuries of observation and experience. This is what makes these structures so powerful. They are a monument to human ingenuity, proving that with community, knowledge, and a deep respect for the natural world, the impossible becomes possible. We look at these ruins today and see more than just an ancient village. We see a blueprint for a resilient living, a lesson in architecture that is just as relevant today as it was 1,000 years ago. Thank you so much for joining us on this architectural deep dive. It's truly humbling to stand in the presence of such incredible history and human achievement. What part of their engineering genius impresses you the most? Let me know down in the comments. I love reading your thoughts. If you enjoyed this journey back in time, please hit that like button. And do you forget to subscribe and ring the notification bell so you do miss our next adventure. Until then, stay curious. Welcome back to our journey through time. Today, we're stepping into Chapter 7. Life between stone walls. We're going beyond the silent, majestic ruins of Mesa Verde and breathing life back into them. We'll imagine the daily rhythm, the sounds, the smells, and the heart of the community that once thrived within these incredible cliff dwellings. Let's peel back the layers of centuries and spend a day with the Ancestral Pueblo people. Picture this. Dawn breaks over the canyon, painting the sandstone walls in shades of soft pink and gold. The first rays of light stream into the plaza of Cliff Palace. Before the sun even crests the mesa top, the village is already stirring. The air, crisp and cool, begins to fill with the comforting scent of burning juniper and pinyon pine from small, controlled hearths. This isn't just the smell of a morning fire. It's the smell of home, of family, of another day beginning. A mother grinds corn on a stone metate, her arms moving in a steady, practiced rhythm passed down through generations. The rhythmic scraping of stone on stone is the village's morning heartbeat. This corn, carefully cultivated on the mesa top, above, is the staff of life. It will become a warm, nourishing cornmeal mush for breakfast, or be shaped into thin, delicate picky bread cooked on a hot, flat stone. The children, still sleepy, gather around, their small hands reaching for a piece of the warm bread. Their laughter echoes softly against the stone walls, a sound that has been missing from this place for over 700 years. As the sun climbs higher, the village becomes a hive of activity. The men prepare to ascend the hand-and-toe-hold trails carved into the sheer cliff face. Their destination is the mesa top, where their fields of corn, beans, and squash await. Tending these crops is a constant, demanding task, vital for the survival of the entire community. They might also form hunting parties, their keen eyes scanning the landscape for deer or rabbit, their movements silent and purposeful. Their knowledge of the land is intimate, a sacred trust. Meanwhile, back in the shelter of the alcove, the women are the masters of the domestic world. It's a world of immense skill and artistry. One woman sits with a yucca leaf, her fingers expertly splitting it into fine fibers. She weaves these into strong sandals, durable baskets, or rope. Nearby, another woman works with clay, sourced from a special, secret place. She coils it, smooths it, and shapes it into a beautiful pot. Her hands know the exact pressure to apply, the perfect curve to form. Later, she'll paint it with intricate black-on-white designs patterns that tell a story, represent a clan, or perhaps hold a prayer. Each pot is not just a utility item. It's a piece of art, a vessel of culture. Children aren't just playing idly. Their games are lessons in disguise. Young boys might practice with small bows and arrows, learning the skills they'll one day need as hunters. Girls watch their mothers, learning to grind corn, shape clay, and weave. They are absorbing the knowledge of their people through observation and participation. Grandparents, the respected elders, are the keepers of stories. They gather the little ones. Their voice is a gentle cadence as they recount tales of the ancestors, the spirits, and the creation of the world. This oral tradition is the glue that binds the community, instilling values, history, and a sense of identity in the next generation. As midday approaches, the sun beats down on the mesa top, but within the deep shade of the cliff dwelling, it remains remarkably cool. The ingenious architecture, oriented to capture the low winter sun and avoid the high summer sun, is a testament to their deep understanding of their environment. Life isn't just lived asterisk on asterisk. The land, it's lived asterisk. With asterisk, irina delicach. Respectful balance. Look down into the circular, subterranean rooms we call kivas. These are the spiritual and social centers of the village. The men gather here, descending by ladder through a hole in the roof, symbolically entering the underworld from which their ancestors emerged. In the cool, dim light, they discuss community matters, plan ceremonies, and perform rituals. The smoke from a central fire curls up towards the sky, carrying their thoughts and prayers. The kiva is the heart of the community, a sacred space that connects the people to each other, to their history, and to the cosmos. As the afternoon light softens, the men return from the fields and the hunt. The village changes its rhythm once more. The air fills with the sounds of conversation and the smells of evening meals cooking. Families gather, sharing food and stories of the day. There's a profound sense of community, of interdependence. Everyone has a role, and every role is valued. Survival and prosperity depend on working together, from the farmer on the mesa top to the potter in the plaza. Imagine the twilight hour. The sky is a canvas of deep purple and orange. The stone walls of the dwellings seem to glow from within. This is a time for quiet reflection, for gathering on the rooftops, for watching the first stars appear. The world is peaceful, enclosed within the protective arms of the sandstone cliff. The only sounds are the murmur of voices, a distant coyote's call, and the whisper of the wind through the canyon. This is a life carved from stone, a testament to human resilience, ingenuity, and deep spiritual connection to the earth. This daily cycle of work, family, and ceremonies, what turned these stone structures into living, breathing homes. When we visit Mesa Verde today, it's easy to be overwhelmed by the silence. But if you listen closely, if you let your imagination wander, you can almost hear the echoes of that life. You can hear the grinding of the metate, the laughter of children, the solemn chants from the kiva. You can feel the heartbeat of a people who built a world between stone walls. Thank you for joining me on this journey into the daily life of the Ancestral Pueblo. It's a powerful reminder that these are not just ruins. They are the legacy of a vibrant and sophisticated culture. If you found this glimpse into the past as fascinating as I do, please hit that like button and subscribe for more stories etched in time. We'll see you in the next chapter. Hello and welcome back to our journey into the world of the Ancestral Pueblo. Today, in Chapter 8, we venture into the very heart of their communities, descending into the shadows of the sacred kivas. These aren't just pits in the ground. They are the spiritual core, the ceremonial centers, and the communal hearts of a civilization deeply connected to the earth and the cosmos. So, what exactly is a kiva? Imagine a circular room, dug into the earth, often with a roof that sits level with the ground above. You'd enter by climbing down a wooden ladder through a single opening in the ceiling, a symbolic journey from the world above into a sacred, subterranean space. These chambers were the exclusive domain for ceremonies, important community meetings, and the passing down of sacred knowledge from one generation to the next. Let's pause for a moment and consider that descent. Climbing down that ladder isn't just a physical act. It's a powerful symbol. It represents a return to the womb of Mother Earth, the place from which the Pueblo people believe their ancestors first emerged into this world. Each step down is a step closer to their origins, a step deeper into the spiritual realm. The darkness, broken only by the flickering light of a central fire pit, would have created an atmosphere of profound mystery and reverence. Once inside, you'd notice several key features. each rich with meaning. The circular shape is fundamental. For many indigenous cultures, the circle represents the cyclical nature of life, the seasons, the sun, and the moon. It has no beginning and no end, symbolizing wholeness, unity, and the interconnectedness of all things. In a kiva, everyone is equidistant from the center, fostering a sense of equality and shared purpose. Look at the floor. You'll often find a small, shallow hole called a sip. This isn't a mistake or a simple drain. The sipapu is one of the most sacred elements of the kiva. It is a symbolic portal, the very place of emergence from the underworlds. It served as a spiritual channel, a direct connection for communication between the people in the physical world and the spirits and ancestors in the world below. It's a constant, physical reminder of their origin story and their place in the cosmos. Now, cast your eyes upward. The ladder you descended represents the pathway back to the upper world, but it also symbolizes the connection between the different realms of existence. The smoke hole in the roof not only allowed smoke from the central fire to escape, but also acted as a window to the sky, a portal to Father Sky and the celestial beings. So, within this single chamber, you have a direct link to the underworld, the present world, and the world of the sky. The kiva is a microcosm of the entire Pueblo universe. Often, you'll see a low bench running along the inner wall. This provided seating for the participants during long rituals and gatherings. Can you imagine the elders sitting here, their faces illuminated by the fire, recounting the creation stories, teaching the young the intricate details of the ceremonies, or discussing matters vital to the survival of the community? The kiva was the classroom, the courthouse, and the church, all rolled into one. It was where social bonds were forged and the cultural fabric was woven. The central fire pit was more than just a source of heat and light. Fire is a purifying element, a transformative force. The warmth it provided in the cool, subterranean space was a symbol of life, community, and the sun's life-giving energy. The rising smoke carried prayers and messages up to the spirit world. The shared warmth of the fire reinforced the bonds of the people gathered together, united in purpose and spirit. Another fascinating feature is the ventilation shaft. This ingenious design brought fresh air down from the surface, across the fire pit, and then up and out through the smoke hole. This created a natural airflow that kept the fire burning and the air inside breathable. But like everything in a kiva, it had a deeper meaning. The air, the very breath of life, was drawn down from the world above, circulated through the sacred space, and returned imbued with the essence of the ceremonies taking place. The walls of some kivas were adorned with incredible murals, painted with pigments made from minerals and plants. These weren't just decorations. They were visual storybooks depicting deities, mythical creatures, celestial events, and scenes from their sacred narratives. These paintings were living documents, teaching tools that made the abstract world of spirits and cosmology tangible and immediate. Imagine sitting in the flickering firelight, listening to an elder's story, while the very characters and events of that story are painted on the walls around you. It would have been an incredibly immersive and powerful experience. There were different types of kivas too. Smaller kivas might have belonged to a single clan or family, used for more intimate ceremonies. Then there were the great kivas, enormous structures that could hold hundreds of people. These were major ceremonial centers for the entire community, or even for multiple villages. The Great Kiva at Chetroquetl in Chaco Canyon, for example, is over 60 feet in diameter. The construction of such a massive structure would have required immense communal effort, a testament to the importance of shared ritual in their society. These great kivas were hubs of regional activity. People would travel for miles to participate in the ceremonies held within them. They were places of pilgrimage, trade, and social exchange, binding together disparate groups into a larger, cohesive cultural network. The rituals performed here likely corresponded with major astronomical events, like solstices and equinoxes, aligning the human world with the rhythms of the cosmos. The kiva, therefore, was not a building you simply entered. It was an experience you participated in. It was an architectural manifestation of a worldview. It physically and symbolically connected the people to their past, their present, and their future. It linked them to the earth below, the sky above, and to each other. Every element, from the Saipapu to the ladder, from the circular wall to the central fire, was a piece of a complex and beautiful puzzle, telling the story of who they were and their place in the universe. As we conclude our exploration of the sacred kivas, we're left with a profound appreciation for the spiritual depth of the ancestral Puebloan people. They built more than just structures. They built vessels for their beliefs, their stories, and their community. These underground chambers remind us that for many cultures, the most sacred spaces are not those that reach for the heavens, but those that connect us to the earth from which we all come. Thank you so much for joining me on this deep dive into the heart of the ancestral Puebloan world. I hope it's given you a new perspective on these incredible structures. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up. And don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you don't miss our next chapter. We truly appreciate your support. See you next time. Welcome back to our journey through history. Today, in Chapter 9, we're exploring farming on the edge. We're heading to the high desert mesas of North America, a place where survival itself seems like a miracle. Yet, against all odds, ancient peoples not only survived but thrived. Their secret, an ingenious system of agriculture centered on three legendary crops: corn, beans, and squash, often called the Three Sisters. Imagine trying to grow anything here, on these sun-baked, windswept mesatops. This is one of the driest regions on the continent, with unpredictable rainfall and thin, sandy soil. It seems impossible, right? But for the ancestral Puebloans and other cultures of the Southwest, it was just another challenge to overcome with brilliant innovation. They became masters of what we now call dryland farming. So, how did they pull it off? It wasn't about one single trick. It was a symphony of techniques working in perfect harmony. First, let's talk about timing. They were expert astronomers, watching the sun, moon, and stars. They knew exactly when to plant to take advantage of the short, intense summer monsoon season. Planting too early meant the seeds would wither in the dry heat. Too late, and the crops wouldn't mature before the first frost. Their calendar was the sky itself. Then there was the location. They didn't just scatter seeds randomly. They chose specific spots on the mesa tops and canyon floors where soil was deeper and moisture lingered longer. They looked for subtle dips in the land, places where runoff from a rare storm would naturally collect. Every single drop of water was a precious resource, and they knew precisely where to find it. But here's where it gets truly clever. Water management. They built small, rock-lined dams and terraces, not to create huge reservoirs, but to slow down the flow of rainwater. When a storm did hit, instead of the water rushing away and eroding the soil, these check dams would hold it back, allowing it to slowly seep into the ground, creating pockets of moisture for the crops. It was a subtle, elegant solution, working with nature, not against it. They also constructed intricate grids of small rock walls, sometimes called waffle gardens. Picture a garden plot divided into small squares by low stone borders. These weren't just for decoration. The rocks would absorb the sun's heat during the day and radiate it back at night, protecting the plants from frost. They also acted as a windbreak, reducing moisture loss from the soil and the plant's leaves. Each little square was a microclimate, a tiny sanctuary for a growing plant. And let's not forget the genius of the Three Sisters themselves. This wasn't just a random combination of crops. They planted them together in a symbiotic relationship. The corn grew tall, providing a natural pole for the bean vines to climb. The beans, in turn, they pull nitrogen from the air and convert it into a nutrient in the soil, fertilizing the corn and squash, which are heavy feeders. Meanwhile, the squash, with its large leaves, would spread out across the ground. This created a living mulch, shading the soil to keep it cool and moist, and preventing weeds from taking over. It was a complete, self-sustaining ecosystem in a single mound of earth. Corn for structure, beans for nutrients, and squash for protection. Together, they provided a nearly complete and balanced diet. They also developed unique varieties of these crops. The corn they grew had incredibly deep roots, capable of reaching moisture far below the surface. Some varieties were adapted to mature quickly. a vital trait in a region with such a short growing season. They saved the best seeds from each harvest, selectively breeding plants that were perfectly suited to this harsh environment over centuries. This wasn't just farming. It was a multi-generational science experiment. Beyond the mesa tops, they also farmed in the canyons. They would build canals, some of which were miles long, to divert water from streams and seeps along the canyon walls to terraced gardens below. Imagine the sheer labor and engineering skill required to carve these channels into rock, all using stone and wood tools. They understood hydrology and gravity on an incredibly sophisticated level. We can see evidence of these practices everywhere in the archaeological record. The feigned outlines of check dams, the grid patterns of ancient gardens, the remnants of canals etched into the landscape. Even the pollen and seeds preserved in ancient storage rooms tell the story of their agricultural success. These weren't just farmers. They were environmental engineers, botanists, and astronomers, all rolled into one. Their ability to cultivate food in such an unforgiving landscape is a powerful testament to human resilience, observation, and ingenuity. They didn't have modern technology or fertilizers. What they had was a deep, intimate understanding of their environment. They listened to the land, watched the sky, and learned to work within the natural cycles of the desert. This ancient wisdom of dryland farming and water conservation is more relevant today than ever before. As we face our own challenges with changing climates and water scarcity, there is so much we can learn from these masters of the mesas. They prove that with knowledge, patience, and a respect for nature, it is possible to create abundance in the most unlikely of places. Thank you so much for joining me on this exploration of farming on the edge. It's a truly inspiring story of human achievement. If you found this fascinating, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel for more journeys into the past. We'll see you in the next chapter. Welcome, bike history lovers and art enthusiasts. Today, we're journeying back in time to explore chapter 10 of our series, which we're calling The Voices of Art. We're about to uncover a world where everyday objects were transformed into stunning masterpieces, where canyon walls became canvases, and where the human spirit expressed itself in the most beautiful and enduring ways. This isn't just about ancient artifacts. It's about listening to the stories they tell, the silent voices of a people who poured their creativity into stone, clay, and fiber. So, grab your virtual explorer's hat, and let's dive into the breathtaking artistry of the past. Let's begin with one of their most iconic achievements: their pottery. Imagine holding a piece of this history in your hands. You'd be struck by the incredible black-on-white designs. This wasn't just slapping some paint on a pot. This was a refined, sophisticated art form. The white slip, a thin layer of liquid clay, created a smooth, bright canvas. On top of these, artisans painted with a pigment made from minerals and plants. When fired, this pigment turned a deep, rich black, creating a dramatic contrast that is still visually stunning today. The precision is just mind-blowing. The designs themselves are a language of their own. We see intricate geometric patterns, fine lines, step terraces, and spiraling motifs. These weren't random doodles. Each symbol likely held deep meaning, connected to their beliefs, their relationship with nature, or their social identity. Some patterns might represent water or rain, so crucial for survival in an arid landscape. Others could be abstract representations of landscapes, animals, or celestial events. Every pot is a universe of symbols, a visual prayer, a story frozen in time. It's a testament to their patience and their profound connection to the world around them. Making these required not just skill, but a deep understanding of materials and firing techniques. It was a perfect blend of science and soul. Now, let's talk about something we might easily overlook: stone tools. We often think of stone tools as purely functionally an arrowhead for hunting, an axe for chopping wood, and they were, of course, essential for survival. The craftsmanship involved in creating a perfectly balanced axe or a razor-sharp projectile point is an art in itself. This is a process called flint knapping, where a skilled artisan would strike a piece of stone like chert or obsidian with another rock, precisely chipping away flakes to achieve the desired shape. It requires an intuitive understanding of physics and fracture mechanics, But their artistry went beyond mere function. Some stone objects were clearly created for ceremonial purposes or as status symbols. Think of finely polished pendants, effigies carved into animal or human forms, or ceremonial blades, too delicate for practical use. These items show us that beauty and aesthetics were valued. They took a raw, unyielding material like stone and, with incredible skill and patience, imbued it with form, meaning, and a sense of the sacred. The smoothness of a polished gorget, or the perfect symmetry of a ceremonial mace, speaks volumes. It tells us that these people didn't just want to survive. They wanted to create objects that were beautiful to look at and meaningful to hold. Next, let's turn our attention to the delicate art of weaving. While baskets and textiles are organic and far less likely to survive the centuries than pottery or stone, the fragments we have found are absolutely extraordinary. Imagine weaving baskets so tight they could hold water. That's the level of skill we're talking about. They used natural fibers from plants like yucca and sumac, preparing them carefully before weaving them into complex patterns. These weren't just containers. They were works of art used for everything from storing food to carrying goods. The patterns woven into their baskets and textiles often mirrored the geometric designs found on their pottery. This consistency across different media suggests a shared visual culture, a common set of symbols and aesthetic principles that permeated their society. They created sandals, bags, mats, and blankets, each one a testament to their resourcefulness and their eye for design. Weaving is an intimate, time-consuming process. Every stitch, every twist of the fiber is a deliberate act. It connects the maker to the plant, the earth, and the generations of weavers who came before them. These woven objects are a whisper of their daily lives, of the clothes they wore and the vessels that held their food. Finally, we arrive at the most public and monumental art form of all, the petroglyphs, carved, pecked, and etched into the dark desert varnish of the canyon walls. These images are a sprawling, outdoor art gallery. Here, we see a different kind of voice, one that speaks to the entire community and perhaps to the gods themselves. The subjects are incredibly varied. We see human-like figures, often called anthropomorphs, with elaborate headdresses or holding symbolic objects. We see animals that were vital to their existence: bighorn sheep, deer, and snakes. And then there are the abstract symbols: spirals, concentric circles, zigzag lines, and complex geometric shapes that we can only guess at the meaning of. Are these maps of the cosmos? Records of astronomical events, like supernovas or eclipses? Are they spiritual symbols used in rituals, marking sacred places, or telling origin stories? The act of creating a petroglyph was physically demanding, requiring hours of pecking at the hard rock surface with a stone tool. This wasn't casual graffiti. This was a deliberate, meaningful act of communication, intended to last for eternity. Standing before these rock panels, you can't help but feel a powerful connection to the people who stood in that exact spot, centuries ago, carving their world onto the stone. So, when we look at the pottery, the stone tools, the baskets, and the petroglyphs, we're not just looking at artifacts. We are looking at a conversation that spans centuries. These objects are the voices of art. They tell us about a culture that was deeply connected to its environment, that possessed incredible technical skill, and that infused every aspect of life with meaning and beauty. From the curve of a pot to the pecked line on a cliff face, their creativity shines through, reminding us that the need to create, to express, and to leave a mark is a fundamental part of the human experience. They show us that art isn't a luxury. It's a vital language that connects us to our past and to each other. Thank you so much for joining me on this artistic journey back in time. I hope you feel as inspired by these ancient voices as I do. What did you find most fascinating? The pottery, the stone tools, the weaving, or the petroglyphs? Let me know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this exploration, please give this video a thumbs up, and don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you won't miss our next chapter. Until next time, stay curious. Welcome, bike history explorers. Today, we're journeying back in time to the stunning cliff dwellings of Mesa Verde. It's easy to look at these incredible structures, tucked away in the canyons of what is now southwestern Colorado, and imagine a people living in splendid isolation. You might picture a self-sufficient community, their world confined to the mesas and valleys they called home. But what if I told you that this picture is incomplete? What if these seemingly remote villages were actually bustling hubs in a vast, interconnected network that spanned hundreds, even thousands of miles? In this chapter of our series, The Network of Trade, we're going to shatter the myth of an isolated Mesa Verde. We'll uncover the evidence that reveals a society deeply connected to distant cultures and economies. Forget the idea of a secluded people. The Ancestral Puebloans of Mesa Verde were cosmopolitan traders, travelers, and artisans whose influence and connections reached far beyond their canyon walls. So, grab your gear, because we are about to follow the ancient trade routes that turned these cliff dwellings into a crossroads of the ancient Southwest. Let's start with one of the most prized materials in the ancient Americas: turquoise. This vibrant blue-green stone was more than just a pretty ornament. It was a symbol of wealth, status, and spiritual power. For the people of Mesa Verde, acquiring turquoise was a major endeavor. The nearest significant sources were located in what is now New Mexico, Arizona, and even parts of Nevada, hundreds of miles away. Yet, archaeologists have unearthed an abundance of turquoise artifacts within Mesa Verde. We're talking about exquisite necklaces, delicate inlay on pendants, and ceremonial objects, all crafted with a skill that speaks to how much they valued this stone. How did it get there? Through trade. The people of Mesa Verde were key players in a massive turquoise trade network. Imagine traders making the long, arduous journey south, perhaps carrying high-quality pottery or locally grown produce to exchange for raw or worked turquoise. The primary hub for this trade was the incredible Chaco Canyon, a major cultural and political center to the south. Chaco was like the Wall Street of the ancient Southwest, and turquoise was its primary currency. Materials from Chacoan mines and workshops flowed north to Mesa Verde, and in return Mesa Verdean goods traveled south. This wasn't just a simple exchange. It was a sophisticated economic relationship that tied these two powerful regions together for centuries. The turquoise found at Mesa Verde is a tangible link, a physical piece of evidence proving their deep connection to the wider world. But the trade didn't stop with precious stones. Let's look at something even more surprising. Seashells. That's right, objects from the ocean, found deep in the landlocked heart of the continent. Archaeologists at Mesa Verde have discovered bracelets, beads, and pendants made from marine shells, specifically from species like the Olivella and Glessimeris shells. Where did they come from? The nearest source is the Gulf of California, over 600 miles away, or the Pacific coast, even further. This is an astonishing distance to transport such delicate items, in a time without wheeled vehicles or beasts of burden. This tells us that the trade networks were incredibly extensive. These shells would have passed through many hands, a chain of trade and exchange stretching from the coastal peoples all the way to the high plateaus of Colorado. Each shell represents a connection, a story of travel and interaction. For the Mesa Verdeans, these exotic items would have been incredibly precious, symbols of a world far beyond their own horizon. They weren't just jewelry. They were whispers of the ocean, emblems of long-distance relationships and the vastness of their known world. This flow of goods demonstrates a level of social and economic organization that is truly connecting coastal, desert, and mountain peoples in a shared system of value and exchange. Now, let's talk about something the people of Mesa Verde were famous for producing themselves: their pottery. Mesa Verdean potters were true artists, known for their distinctive black-on-white designs. Their mugs, bowls, and jars weren't just utilitarian. They were works of art, decorated with intricate geometric patterns that are still admired today. And this pottery was in high demand. Just as Mesa Verde imported goods like turquoise and shells, it exported its own signature products. Archaeologists have found Mesa Verde-style pottery scattered across the Southwest, from sites in Utah and Arizona to deep within New Mexico. What does this tell us? It shows that Mesa Verde wasn't just a consumer in this network. It was a major producer and exporter. Their craftsmanship was recognized and valued by neighboring peoples. A Mesa Verdean mug found in a village hundreds of miles away is a testament to the reputation of its makers. This trade in pottery also facilitated the spread of ideas and artistic styles. We can see Mesa Verdean influence in the pottery of other regions. And likewise, we can see outside influences in some of the later Mesa Verdean styles. This exchange of goods was also an exchange of culture. It fostered a shared artistic language across the region and reinforces the idea of the Ancestral Pueblo world as a dynamic and interconnected cultural landscape, rather than a collection of isolated groups. These trade routes were the arteries of the ancient Southwest, and traveling them was no small feat. The terrain between Mesa Verde and its trading partners like Chaco Canyon is rugged and challenging. So how did they do it? The Ancestral Puebloans built an incredible system of roads. While the most famous are the Chacoan roads, evidence suggests a network of trails and pathways connected communities all across the Four Corners region. These weren't paved superhighways, but they were carefully engineered and maintained routes. Imagine traders walking single file, their backs laden with goods pottery, textiles, corn, turquoise, and salt following these paths that cut across mesas, descended into canyons, and stretched across vast desert plains. These journeys were likely planned around seasons and would have taken weeks, even months. Along the way, traders might have stayed in small, outlying communities, creating a chain of hospitality and exchange that strengthened social bonds between different groups. This network wasn't just for commercial goods. It was for information, for people, for ceremonies, and for alliances. Marriage partners may have been found in distant villages, and ceremonial knowledge could be shared. These roads were the lifelines that pumped goods, people, and ideas throughout the region, keeping the society vibrant and connected. The very existence of these extensive pathways is powerful proof against the idea of isolation. So, what happened to this bustling network? As we know, around the late 13th century, the people of Mesa Verde began to leave their cliff dwellings. This migration is a complex story with many factors, including drought and social conflict. But the breakdown of these trade networks likely played a significant role. As the Chacoan system to the south collapsed a century earlier, it would have sent shockwaves through the regional economy. The flow of prestige goods like turquoise may have dwindled, disrupting the social and political structures that depended on them. When climatic changes put pressure on local agriculture, the inability to rely on long-distance trade for supplemental food could have been devastating. The migration from Mesa Verde wasn't a sudden disappearance into thin air. The people moved, likely in stages, to new homes to the south and southeast, joining existing communities in places like the Rio Grande Valley in New Mexico and the Hopi Mesas in Arizona, and they took their skills, their traditions, and their memories with them. In fact, many modern Pueblo people, including the Hopi, trace their ancestry directly back to Mesa Verde. The trade routes became migration routes. The connections that once brought turquoise and shells to Mesa Verde now guided its people to their new homes. The network didn't just vanish, it transformed, and its legacy lives on in the cultures and traditions of their descendants today. In conclusion, the image of a solitary Mesa Verde, cut off from the world, simply doesn't hold up to the evidence. The canyons and mesas were alive with the flow of goods, ideas, and people. From the shimmering turquoise of New Mexico to the pearlescent shells of the distant ocean, and the iconic black-on-white pottery traveling outwards, Mesa Verde was a vital node in a complex and far-reaching network. The Ancestral Puebloans were not just survivors, they were sophisticated traders, skilled artisans, and intrepid travelers who shaped and were shaped by a world far larger than their immediate surroundings. Understanding this network of trade is essential to truly appreciating the complexity, resilience, and cosmopolitan nature of this incredible ancient culture. Thank you so much for joining me on this deep dive into the trade networks of Mesa Verde. If you found this journey as fascinating as I did, please give this video a thumbs up and consider subscribing to the channel for more explorations into the past. Don't forget to hit that notification bell so you won't miss our next chapter. We'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Until next time, stay curious. Hello and welcome back to our journey through the annals of history. Today, in our 12th chapter, Seasons of Stone, we delve into the very rhythm of ancient life. A rhythm dictated not by clocks or calendars, but by the turning of the earth itself. We'll explore how our ancestors navigated the relentless cycle of the seasons, the scorching heat of summer, the biting cold of winter, and the delicate, ever-present dance between survival and ceremony. Imagine a world without thermostats, without supermarkets, without the conveniences we take for granted. This was the reality for the people of the Stone Age. Their existence was a testament to human resilience and ingenuity, a constant adaptation to the world around them. Let's begin with the arrival of spring, a season of rebirth and relief. As the last of the winter snow melted away, the land would awaken. Rivers, swollen with meltwater, teemed with fish migrating upstream. The air, once sharp with frost, now carried the scent of damp earth and new growth. For ancient peoples, spring was a time of immense opportunity, but also of urgent work. Food stores, carefully rationed throughout the long winter, were likely running dangerously low. This was the hungry gap, a precarious period before the new season's bounty became available. The entire community would mobilize. Groups would head to the rivers and coastlines, using woven nets, bone hooks, and meticulously crafted weirs to trap spawning fish like salmon and trout. This influx of protein was a vital lifeline. Simultaneously, others would venture into the budding forests and grasslands. They were expert botanists with a deep generational knowledge of the landscape. They knew precisely where to find the first edible shoots, young nettles, wild garlic, and tender roots plants, packed with nutrients that had been scarce for months. Spring was also a time for repair and preparation. Tools that had been damaged or worn down over the winter needed to be fixed or replaced. New stone points were napped for arrows and spears. Hides were tanned and prepared for clothing or shelter repairs, and pottery, if they had it, was fired. It was a period of intense activity, a race against time to gather resources and prepare for the coming months of plenty. The longer days and milder weather didn't just mean more food. They meant more time to work, to build, to secure their future. Then came summer, the season of abundance. The sun climbed high in the sky, bathing the landscape in warmth and light. Life, in many ways, became easier. The forests were lush and green, offering a veritable feast. Berries ripened on the bushwild, strawberries, raspberries, and blueberries a sweet, energy-rich treat. Nuts began to form on the trees, and a vast array of edible plants and fungi were available for foraging. Hunting also changed. Large herds of herbivores, like deer, aurochs, and wild horses, were fat and healthy, grazing in open meadows. Hunting parties, armed with spears, atlatless, and bows, would track these animals. Their success meaning a significant stockpile of meat, hides, and bone. This was the time to feast, to build up fat reserves in their own bodies, in preparation for the leaner times ahead. But summer brought its own formidable challenges. The heat could be oppressive and dangerous. Finding shade and staying cool was a matter of survival. Water sources could dry up, forcing communities to relocate or travel long distances to find fresh water. Insects, like mosquitoes and biting flies, would have been a constant nuisance, not just annoying but also potential carriers of disease. Food preservation was another critical task. Without refrigeration, meat and fish had to be smoked, dried, or salted to prevent berries and plants were laid out on flat rocks to dry in the sun. Every morsel of the summer bounty had to be processed and stored, a crucial investment in their winter survival. It was a season of long days filled with hard, hot work, all aimed at capitalizing on nature's generosity. As the days began to shorten and a crisp chill crept into the air, autumn would arrive. This was perhaps the most crucial season of all, the final, frantic push before the onset of winter. The harvest was in full swing. Nuts like acorns and hazelnuts were gathered in vast quantities. These were nutritional powerhouses, rich in fats and proteins, but many, like acorns, required extensive processing, leaching out bitter tannins to become edible. This was laborious, but essential work. The great animal migrations began, offering one last major opportunity for hunting on a large scale. Communities might gather at known migration routes, coordinating their efforts for a mass hunt. A successful autumn hunt could mean the difference between thriving and starving during the winter. It was also the time to gather firewood, An enormous amount of dry wood was needed to keep fires burning through the long, cold months for warmth, cooking, and protection. Shelter became a primary focus. Whether they lived in caves, rock shelters, or human-made structures of wood, bone, and hide, preparations were vital. Existing shelters were reinforced, patched with fresh hides, and insulated with moss and dried grass to keep out the wind and snow. The entire community worked with a shared sense of urgency, driven by the knowledge that winter was unforgiving. There was a palpable tension in the air, a race to ensure every possible provision was secured before the land was locked in ice. And then, winter descended. The world transformed into a landscape of white and gray. For many ancient peoples, this was a time of turning inward. The furious activity of the other seasons gave way to a quieter, more confined existence. Life moved indoors, into the smoky warmth of the cave or hut, centered around the life-giving fire. Survival in winter was an art form. It depended entirely on the preparations made during the autumn. The stores of dried meat, fish, nuts, and berries were their lifeline. Every portion was carefully managed. Days were short and cold, and outdoor activity was limited and often dangerous. A simple fall on the ice could lead to a broken bone, a potential death sentence in a world without modern medicine. Hunting was difficult. Animals were scarcer and harder to track in the snow. Small game, like rabbits or birds caught in snares, would have been a welcome supplement to their dwindling stores. But winter wasn't just about grim survival. It was also a vital time for community and culture. With the practical work of gathering food largely on hold, people had time. This was when stories were told around the flickering flame stales of the ancestors, myths of creation, and legends of heroic hunts. Knowledge was passed down from elders to the young. It was a time for crafting. New tools were planned and meticulously knapped from flint. Bone needles were carved, and beads were made from shells or teeth for adornment. Perhaps this is when many of the famous cave paintings were created, deep within the earth. Acts of ceremony, magic, or storytelling. Winter was the ultimate test of their planning, their skills, and their social bonds. It was the season that balanced life and death on a knife's edge, where the strength of the community was paramount. Sharing resources, caring for the sick and elderly, and working together were not just ideals. They were the fundamental principles of survival. They cycled the urgent blossoming of spring, the abundant labor of summer, the frantic harvest of autumn, and the introspective stillness of winter was the engine of their world. It shaped their bodies, their minds, and their societies. It fostered a profound and intimate connection to the natural world, an understanding we have largely lost. Life was a constant balance between the practical demands of survival and the human need for ceremony, art, and connection. Each season presented its own tests and its own gifts, and in mastering this eternal rhythm, our Stone Age ancestors laid the very foundation for all that was to come. Thank you so much for joining me on this journey back through the seasons of stone. If you found this glimpse into the past as fascinating as I do, please consider liking this video and subscribing to the channel for more explorations of our shared history. We'd love to have you with us. See you next time. The wind, once a gentle friend, now howls with a different voice. It carries not the sweet scent of rain or the promise of a bountiful harvest, but the fine, gritty dust of a land growing weary. This is where our story takes a turn, into a chapter we call Signs of Change. For generations, the rhythm of this community was tied to the land, a predictable and comforting dance of seasons. Sowing in the spring, tending in the summer, reaping in the autumn, and resting in the winter. The earth was a generous partner, always providing. But now, the rhythm is broken. The music has faded. Look at the sky. Once a brilliant, endless blue, it's now often a hazy, washed-out canvas. The sun beats down with an unfamiliar intensity. Day after day, week after week. The rains, once so faithful, have become shy visitors, their brief appearances barely enough to settle the dust, let alone quench the thirst of the parched fields. We've entered a time of prolonged drought. The elders, who can read the land like a sacred text, look at the cracked earth with worry etched deep into their faces. They speak of times past, of dry spells. Yes, but nothing like this. The soil is tired, one says. crumbling a fistful of dry dirt that turns to powder and is stolen by the wind. It's forgotten the taste of water. This isn't just an inconvenience, it's a crisis unfolding in slow motion. The corn stalks, which should be standing tall and proud, are stunted and yellowed, their leaves curled in on themselves as if in pain. The bean vines are withered, their flowers dropping before they can bear fruit. The once vibrant vegetable patches are now mosaics of brown and green, a testament to a battle being lost. This is what crop failure looks like, up close. It's the silence where the rustle of healthy plants should be. The river, the lifeblood of this valley, is a shadow of its former self. Where it once ran deep and strong, it's now a shallow, meandering stream. The smooth, gray stones of its bed, usually hidden beneath the current, are now exposed and baking in the sun. The fish, a vital source of food, are harder to find, retreating to the few remaining deep pools. The community's main artery is hardening. With the crops failing and the river shrinking, resources are becoming scarce. The granaries, usually full to bursting after a harvest, are worryingly low. Families who once shared their surplus with pride now measure out each portion with care. The future, once a certainty, is now a question mark. This environmental stress isn't just changing the landscape, it's changing the people. Conversations that were once filled with laughter and plans for the future are now hushed, tinged with anxiety. You see it in the marketplace, where haggling is sharper and supplies are limited. You feel it in the evening gatherings, where the usual songs are replaced by somber discussions about the weather, the wells, and the failing crops. The sense of abundance, the very foundation of their culture of generosity, is eroding. People are starting to look at their neighbors not just as friends, but as competitors for the same dwindling resources. A subtle tension, a quiet fear, has begun to weave itself into the fabric of the community. It's the stress of survival. The children, who should be playing freely, are now tasked with longer walks to fetch water from wells that are digging deeper and deeper into the earth. Their games are quieter, their laughter less frequent. They are inheriting a world of scarcity, a world their parents never knew. The spiritual leaders call for prayers and rituals, pleading with the heavens for rain, for a return to the old ways. But as the sun rises each morning into another cloudless sky, a seed of doubt begins to sprout. Is this a test? A punishment? Or is it something new? A permanent shift they are not prepared for? The signs are everywhere. The desperate lowing of thirsty cattle. The sight of birds migrating at the wrong time of year. The strange, bitter taste of the water drawn from the deepest parts of the well. The land is speaking, and its language is one of hardships. This isn't just a story about a drought. It's about resilience being pushed to its absolute limit. It's about a community teetering on the brink, forced to confront a future they never imagined. The old ways are no longer enough. The unspoken contract between the people and the land has been breached, and no one knows how to repair it. As we stand here, amidst the wilting fields and the dusty paths, we are witnessing the beginning of a profound transformation. The pressures from the environment are squeezing this community, forcing it to change or break. Every dry sunrise, every failed crop, every drop of water that becomes harder to find, is a sign that the world they knew is fading, and a new, uncertain chapter is beginning. The question that hangs in the air, as heavy as the heat itself, is not just will the rains return, but who will we become if they don't? The foundation of their world is cracking, and the tremors are just beginning to be felt. The real test of their strength, their ingenuity, and their bonds with one another is about to begin. The signs of change are clear, and the story is far from over. Thank you so much for joining me on this part of the journey. If this story resonates with you, please consider liking this video and subscribing to our channel. Your support allows us to continue bringing these important narratives to light. We'll see you in the next chapter. Welcome back to our journey through time. Today, we step into chapter 14, Shadows in the Kivas. For centuries, the Ancestral Puebloan civilization flourished, building breathtaking cliff dwellings and vast, interconnected communities across the Four Corners region. But by the late 1200s, something changed. The great houses fell silent, and the vibrant plazas were left to the wind. What? This is one of archaeology's most profound mysteries. and the clues lie hidden in the shadows. For a long time, the dominant theory was climate change. A mega-drought, revealed by tree ring data, gripped the region from about 1275 to 1299. Imagine 2 decades with very little rain. For a society dependent on maize, beans, and squash, this would have been catastrophic. Failed harvests would lead to malnutrition and famine. Archaeological evidence supports this. We see signs of nutritional stress in human remains from this period. Things like stunted growth and specific lines on bones that indicate periods of starvation. The rivers would have dried up, the springs would have failed, and the very foundation of their agricultural world would have crumbled. It's a compelling, straightforward explanation. Resource scarcity, driven by a changing climate, forced the people to leave in search of greener, more hospitable lands. But is that the whole story? As archaeologists dug deeper, a more complex, and frankly, a more disturbing picture began to emerge. The final years of the Ancestral Puebloans weren't just a peaceful migration. They were marked by fear and violence. We find settlements from this late period built in highly defensive positions on top of steep mesas, at the very back of deep canyons, places that are incredibly difficult to access. Why build your home in such an inconvenient, hard-to-reach spot, unless you were afraid of something or someone? The evidence of conflict is undeniable. We find burned villages, skeletons with signs of violent trauma, skulls bashed in, projectile points embedded in bone. Perhaps most chillingly, we find unburied bodies left where they fell inside their homes. This is a stark departure from the respectful burial practices that characterized their culture for centuries. It suggests a complete breakdown of social order, a society so stressed that they couldn't even perform the final rites for their dead. Was this neighbor turning against neighbor, fighting over the last scraps of food and the last drops of water? Or were they defending themselves from outside raiders? The answer is likely a bit of both. The drought didn't just create hunger. It created desperation, and desperation can lead to violence. And then there are the kivasta, sacred, subterranean chambers at the heart of every Puebloan village. These were the centers of their religious and ceremonial life. In many abandoned sites, kivas were deliberately burned. What does this mean? Was it a final, desperate act of closing a chapter, or was it something more sinister? Some researchers have proposed the idea of a spiritual crisis. Imagine you are a farmer in the 1280s. For generations, your ceremonies have brought the rain, ensured the harvest, and maintained the balance of the world. Your spiritual leaders, the priests and elders, hold the knowledge to appease the gods and communicate with the spirits. But now, the rains don't come. The corn withers on the stalk. The children are hungry. Your prayers seem to go unanswered. Would you start to lose faith? This theory suggests that the social contract between the people and their religious leaders fractured. If the old ways, the old ceremonies, were no longer working, maybe the people revolted. Burning the kivas could have been a powerful act of rejection, a statement that the spiritual system had failed. Some oral traditions from modern Pueblo descendants speak of internal strife, of factions and disagreements that tore communities apart. Perhaps it was a combination of factors. The religious leaders, unable to end the drought, lost their authority. Ambitious rivals might have seen an opportunity to seize power, leading to civil unrest. This internal conflict, layered on top of the famine and external threats, would have been the final, fatal blow. Another fascinating and controversial line of evidence points to a potential shift in religious practice. In some late-period sites, archaeologists have found imagery and ritual objects that seem different. Some have interpreted this as the arrival of a new, more violent cult or ideology, possibly from the south, from what is now Mexico. This new belief system might have challenged the traditional, more harmonious worldview of the Pueblo. Think of it as a political or religious revolution. Its arrival could have split communities, pitting traditionalists against converts, leading to the violence and chaos we see in the archaeological record. The evidence for this is still debated, but it adds another layer to the mystery. It suggests that the end wasn't just an environmental collapse, but a cultural one as well. So, let's assemble the pieces. We have a devastating, decades-long drought, that crippled agriculture. This led to widespread malnutrition and starvation. The scarcity of resources likely ignited conflict, both within communities and between different groups, all competing for survival. This is evidenced by the defensive architecture and signs of brutal violence. And simmering beneath it all, a potential crisis of faith, a breakdown of the social and religious order that had held their world together for 1,000 years. The ceremonies failed, the leaders lost their authority, and internal divisions tore society apart. There was no single cause for the abandonment. It was a perfect storm, a domino effect where each disaster amplified the next. The environment, society, and religion, all three pillars of their world, crumbled at once. The people didn't vanish. They were survivors. They made the incredibly difficult decision to leave their ancestral homes, the homes their ancestors had built stone by stone. They journeyed south and east, towards the Rio Grande in New Mexico and the Hopi Mesas in Arizona, where there was more reliable water. They carried their traditions, their languages, and their memories with them, and their descendants live on today in the modern Pueblo communities. The shadows and the kivas tell a cautionary tale. They remind us that even the most advanced and resilient societies are vulnerable. They show us how quickly a civilization can unravel when faced with environmental change, resource scarcity, and social division. It's a story that echoes through history and holds powerful lessons for our own time. The silent cities of the Ancestral Puebloans stand as a solemn monument to this complex and tragic end, a reminder of the fragility of human existence in the face of overwhelming change. Thank you so much for joining me on this deep dive into the past. It's a complex and sometimes dark chapter, but a crucial one for understanding the human story in the American Southwest. If you found this fascinating, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel for more explorations into the mysteries of history. We'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Until next time, keep exploring. Imagine, for a moment, a thriving city carved into the very cliffs of the earth. Picture bustling plazas, multi-story homes reaching for the sky, and the sounds of life echoing through canyons. Now, imagine it all falling silent. This isn't a scene from a fantasy novel. It is the real story of the Ancestral Pueblo people and one of the greatest mysteries in North American history, the Great Departure. Welcome back to our journey through time. Today, we stand at a profound turning point, around the year 1300 CE. For centuries, the Ancestral Puebloans had built magnificent communities across the Four Corners, region places like Mesa Verde, Chaco Canyon, and Canyon de Chelly. These were not just simple villages. They were sophisticated urban centers, hubs of trade, ceremony, and incredible architectural achievement. They had mastered dryland farming, built complex irrigation systems, and created a rich cultural world that thrived in a challenging landscape. But then, something happened. Within the span of just a few decades, these incredible cliff dwellings and great houses were abandoned. The plazas grew quiet, the kivas fell empty, and the footpaths faded. It's as if an entire civilization vanished, leaving behind their homes, their pottery, and countless questions that still puzzle archaeologists and historians today. Why did they leave? Where did they go? This is the mystery we're exploring in this chapter. The Great Departure. One of the most compelling theories points to the sky, or rather, the lack of what fell from it. Climate change. Tree data, which acts like a historical weather report, tells us a dramatic story. Starting in the mid-1200s, the region was gripped by what scientists call the Great Drought. This wasn't just a dry summer. It was a period of severe, prolonged drought that lasted for more than 2 decades, from about 1276 to 1299. Think about what that means for a society built on agriculture. The corn, beans, and squash that were the bedrock of their diet would have failed year after year. Streams and springs would have dried up. The carefully constructed reservoirs, which had sustained them for generations, would have turned to dust. When your entire food supply collapses, staying put is no longer an option. The land that had nurtured them for so long could no longer support the large, concentrated populations living in these cliff cities. The strain on resources would have been immense. It's a powerful argument. They left because they had to, in a desperate search for water and fertile land. But was it just about the environment? Scarcity of resources often leads to another destabilizing force. Social conflict. As food and water became scarcer, tensions likely flared. Imagine different villages competing for the last remaining pockets of farmable land, or the last trickles of water from a dying spring. Archaeologists have found evidence from this period that suggests an increase in conflict. Some sites show signs of defensive walls being built late in their occupation. Skeletons have been found with signs of violent trauma. This doesn't necessarily mean widespread warfare, but it points to a society under extreme stress. Perhaps the social fabric that had held these communities together for centuries began to unravel. The leadership structures, the systems of trade and cooperation may have buckled under the pressure of survival. When your neighbors become your rivals, the sense of community can break down, prompting groups to splinter off and seek their fortunes elsewhere, away from the conflict and competition. Leaving wasn't just about finding food, it might have been about finding peace. However, reducing this monumental migration to just environmental and social pressures might be missing a crucial piece of the puzzle, the spiritual dimension. For the modern Pueblo people, who are the descendants of the Ancestral Puebloans, this wasn't an abandonment. It was a fulfillment of a prophecy, a spiritual calling. Their oral traditions speak of long migratory journeys as a central part of their cosmic view. According to these traditions, their ancestors were always meant to move, to follow a spiritual path, guided by cosmic signs and religious leaders. The great houses and cliff dwellings were not necessarily meant to be permanent homes, but rather stopping points on a much longer, sacred journey. In this view, the Great Departure was not a tragedy, but a planned and spiritually ordained migration southward. The call to move may have come from their religious leaders, who interpreted the drought and social strife not as disasters, but as signs that it was time to continue their journey. They were heading toward the center place, seeking spiritual renewal and a new home, which many found along the Rio Grande in present-day New Mexico and at the Hopi Mesas in Arizona. These are the places where their descendants live today, carrying on the traditions of their ancestors. So, what is the real answer? The truth is, it's likely not one single thing. The Great Departure was probably a complex event, a perfect storm of multiple factors converging at once. Imagine the Great Drought pushing them to the brink, weakening their ability to grow food. This scarcity then ignites social tensions, making life in the concentrated villages increasingly difficult. And woven through it all is a deep-seated cultural and spiritual belief system that provides a framework for understanding these challenges. Not as an end, but as a signal to move on, to continue a sacred journey. It wasn't a panicked flight, but a deliberate, phased migration over several decades. Different groups likely left at different times, moving in different directions, seeking new opportunities. They took with them what mattered most: their knowledge, their culture, their religious practices, and their identity. They left their homes behind, but they didn't leave their heritage. They simply transplanted it, allowing it to take root and flourish in new soil. The silent cities they left behind are not monuments to a lost civilization, but powerful testaments to their resilience and adaptability. They are reminders that in the face of immense challenges, climate change, resource scarcity, social strife, these people made a courageous choice. They chose to move, to adapt, to survive, and to carry their culture forward. The mystery of the Great Departure isn't just about why they left. It's about understanding the incredible strength and vision it took to begin a new chapter. The story didn't end in 1300 CE. It simply turned a page. Thank you so much for joining me on this exploration into one of history's most fascinating migrations. The story of the Ancestral Puebloans is a powerful lesson in human endurance. If you found this journey as captivating as I did, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel for more deep dives into the mysteries of the past. Don't forget to ring the notification bell so you won't miss our next adventure. We'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. What do you think was the primary reason for the Great Departure? Until next time, keep questioning and keep exploring. Hello, and welcome back to our journey through time. In our previous chapters, we've marveled at the silent stone cities of Mesa Verde, pondering the lives of those who built them and the mystery of their departure. But the story doesn't end in the 13th century with an empty cliff dwelling. The people of Mesa Verde didn't vanish. They migrated, adapted, and live on. Today, we're exploring the most vital chapter of this story, the living lineage of the ancestral. We're tracing their descendants, the modern Pueblo peoples of today, and discovering how the spirit of Mesa Verde is vibrantly alive in their traditions, ceremonies, and very identity. The people we call the Ancestral Puebloans never called themselves that. It's an archaeological term. To their descendants, like the Hopi, Zuni, and the various Rio Grande Pueblo communities, they are simply the ancestors. Their departure from the Four Corners region, including Mesa Verde, wasn't an ending, but a profound journey of migration guided by prophecy, environmental change, and a spiritual quest. This epic journey is not just a historical footnote. It is the foundational story of many modern Pueblo communities, passed down through generations, not in textbooks, but through the powerful, living medium of oral tradition. Imagine sitting with a Pueblo elder as they recount stories that have been told for centuries. These aren't just fairy tales. They are a rich tapestry of history, morality, and cosmology. They speak of different worlds, of clans journeying in search of the center place. Many of these oral histories explicitly trace their origins back to the great settlements of the north, to places like Chaco Canyon and Mesa Verde. For the Hopi people, for instance, these ancient sites are footprints left by their ancestors during their long spiritual migration across the continent before settling at their current mesas. The cliff dwellings aren't ruins, they are ancestral homes, imbued with the spirit and memory of those who lived there. This connection is more than just a story, it is a lived reality. When you visit a modern Pueblo, you can see the echoes of Mesa Verde everywhere. Look at the architecture. The multi-story adobe structures of Taos Pueblo, for example, clearly echo the stacked dwellings of Cliff Palace. The use of kivas, subterranean ceremonial chambers, continues to be a central feature of spiritual life in all Pueblo communities, just as it was for their ancestors 1,000 years ago. They are the continuation of an architectural and spiritual tradition that has been refined and adapted over centuries but has never been broken. The agricultural practices also tell a story of incredible resilience and continuity. The Ancestral Puebloans were master dryland farmers, coaxing corn, beans, and squash from an arid landscape. Today, Pueblo farmers use techniques passed down through countless generations. They understand the subtle rhythms of the desert, the importance of water conservation, and the sacred nature of corn. Corn is not merely food. It is a divine gift, a symbol of life itself. The ceremonies, songs, and prayers surrounding the planting and harvesting of corn are deeply connected to the practices of their ancestors, a testament to an agricultural and spiritual wisdom that has sustained them for millennia. Ceremony is perhaps the most powerful and visible link to the ancestral past. Throughout the year, Pueblo communities hold elaborate ceremonial dances. These are not performances for tourists. They are profound religious observances, prayers made manifest through movement, song, and intricate regalia. The Kashina ceremonies of the Hopi and Zuni, for example, involve masked dancers who embody ancestral spirits, or Katsinam, who act as intermediaries between the human and spirit worlds. They bring blessings, rain, and enforce social and spiritual order. The symbolism in their masks and costumes often contains elements that archaeologists have found depicted in ancient kiva murals and on rock art panels throughout the Mesa Verde region. It's a living, breathing connection to the spiritual world of their ancestors. This deep, personal connection is why modern Pueblo people feel such a strong sense of stewardship for ancestral sites like Mesa Verde. To them, these are not just archaeological parks. They are sacred landscapes. They are burial grounds, places of prayer, and chapters of their own family history written in stone. Many Pueblo communities work closely with the National Park Service and other land management agencies. As official consultants, their oral histories and traditional knowledge provide invaluable insights that archaeology alone cannot. They can identify the purpose of certain structures, the meaning of a petroglyph, or the spiritual significance of a particular spring, enriching our understanding of these ancient places in ways we never could on our own. For instance, the Tehuaspican peoples of the Rio Grande Pueblos have oral traditions that describe the specific clans that migrated from the Mesa Verde region and where they eventually settled. This information helps archaeologists trace migration patterns with greater accuracy, connecting the dots between abandoned sites and living communities. It transforms our view of the past from a collection of static ruins to a dynamic story of human movement and cultural evolution. It reminds us that these were people, families, with hopes and beliefs, not just data points on a map. The art forms also carry the ancestral legacy forward. The iconic black-on-white pottery designs found in abundance at Mesa Verde have clear descendants in the pottery traditions of many modern pueblos. While styles have evolved, the geometric patterns, the symbolism, and the meticulous craftsmanship are a direct inheritance. A potter from Acama or Zuni today is engaging in a creative process that is thousands of years old. When they coil the clay and paint a design, they are in conversation with their ancestors, continuing a tradition that defines who they are. The same is true for weaving, jewelry making, and other traditional arts. Each piece is a repository of cultural memory. So, when we stand on a viewpoint overlooking Cliff Palace, it's crucial to remember that the story is not over. The spirit of the people who built these homes didn't fade away into the dust of history. It traveled south and east, carried in the hearts and minds of migrating clans. It was planted anew in the valleys of the Rio Grande and on the high mesas of Arizona and New Mexico. It took root and blossomed into the vibrant cultures of the 21 modern Pueblo nations that thrive today. They are the descendants of the cliffs, the living proof that this incredible culture never truly vanished. They are the keepers of the memory, the storytellers, the dancers, the farmers, and the artists who ensure that the legacy of Mesa Verde will endure for generations to come. Their presence transforms these ancient stones from a silent mystery into a living testament to human resilience, faith, and the unbreakable bond of lineage. Thank you so much for joining me on this deeply meaningful part of our exploration. It's a powerful reminder that history is not just about the past, but about the living connections that shape our present. If you found this perspective as moving as I do, please give this video a like. And don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you won't miss the next and final chapter in our series. See you next time. Imagine a civilization lost to time, its cities of stone hidden away in sheer cliffs, waiting silently for centuries. Then, one cold December day, everything changes. This is the story of Mesa Verde's rediscovery by the modern world. A moment that would ignite a national fascination and forever alter our understanding of America's deep past. Our story begins in the 1880s, a time of expansion and exploration in the American West. The remote, rugged canyons of southwestern Colorado held secrets, whispered about by the local Ute people, but largely unknown to the settlers moving into the region. Among these settlers was the Wetherell family. They were ranchers, cowboys, intimately familiar with the sprawling, labyrinthine landscape. They had heard the stories and had even stumbled upon smaller, isolated ruins while herding their cattle, but they had no idea of the scale of what lay hidden just beyond their usual trails. The pivotal moment arrived in December 1888. Richard Wetherell and his brother-in-law, Charlie Mason, were searching for stray cattle on the high, snow-dusted mesa. Peering across a deep canyon, through the swirling snow, they saw something unbelievable. Tucked into a massive alcove on the opposite cliff, Feist was a villager. Silent city of stone, complete with towers and multi-story structures. It was larger and more complex than anything they had ever imagined. They would later call it Cliff Palace. You have to picture their astonishment. It would be like discovering a lost Roman city in the middle of a national park today. Driven by a mix of awe and adventurous curiosity, they found a way down into the canyon and up the other side. As they stepped into the quiet plazas of Cliff Palace, they were walking into a world frozen in time for over 600 years. They found pottery, tools, and the remnants of daily life, all left behind as if the inhabitants had just walked away. On that same trip, they discovered another massive dwelling, which they named Spruce Tree House for the large Douglas fir growing in front of it. News of the Wetherells' discovery spread like wildfire. It wasn't just a local curiosity. It captured the imagination of the entire nation. Newspapers and magazines ran sensational stories about the cliff dwellers and their mysterious cities. People were enthralled. Who were these people? Why did they build such incredible structures in such inaccessible places? And most tantalizingly, where did they go? The discovery tapped into a romantic notion of a lost, noble civilization in the American wilderness. This initial wave of excitement, however, brought a new set of challenges. The Wetherells, along with other explorers and fortune seekers, began collecting artifacts from the sites. While their intentions were often rooted in a genuine desire to share their find, this period was largely unregulated. Artifacts were removed from their original context, sometimes sold to private collectors and museums across the country and even the world. This pot hunting, as it came to be known, threatened to erase the very history that had just been uncovered. The context of an artifact, what it's found with, is crucial for archaeologists to piece together the story of the past. Without that context, a beautiful pot is just a beautiful pot, its story lost forever. Fortunately, the growing concern over the damage being done to these sites attracted the attention of a new kind of explorer. The archaeologist, one of the most important early figures, was a Swedish scholar named Gustaf Norden. He arrived at Mesa Verde in 1891, just a few years after the Wetherells' discovery. Unlike the collectors before him, Nordenskjöld brought a scientific methodology to his work. He was the first to systematically excavate, photograph, and document the cliff dwellings. He carefully mapped the sites, took detailed notes on the architecture, and analyzed the artifacts he found. His work was groundbreaking. He applied techniques that were standard in European archaeology, but new to the American Southwest. He produced the first scholarly book on Mesa Verde, The Cliff Dwellers of the Mesa Verde, published in 1893. It was filled with stunning photographs and detailed descriptions, offering the world its first scientific look at this incredible culture. However, Nordenskjöld's work was not without controversy. When he prepared to ship his collection of artifacts back to Sweden, local sentiment turned against him. People felt that these treasures belonged to America. He was even briefly arrested, accused of desolating the ruins, although he was eventually allowed to leave with his collection. The incident highlighted a growing national debate. Who owns the past? Who has the right to excavate and possess these cultural treasures? The Nordenskjöld affair, combined with the ongoing looting of sites across the Southwest, became a catalyst for a new movement. The historic preservation movement. People like Virginia McClurg and Lucy Peabody, who had been awed by the cliff dwellings, began to campaign fiercely for their protection. They lobbied politicians, wrote articles, and gave lectures, arguing that these ancient sites were a national heritage that belonged to all Americans and needed to be preserved for future generations. Their tireless efforts paid off. The public and political will to protect these places grew stronger. This movement culminated in the passage of the Antiquities Act of 1906, a landmark piece of legislation signed into law by President Theodore Roosevelt. The act gave the president the authority to declare historic landmarks, prehistoric structures, and other objects of historic or scientific interest as national monuments. And one of the very first places to benefit from this new law was Mesa Verde itself. On June 29, 1906, President Roosevelt established Mesa Verde National Park, making it the first national park created to preserve the works of man. The rediscovery by a few cowboys searching for cattle had led, in less than 2 decades, to the creation of a national institution dedicated to protecting this irreplaceable piece of human history. The era of rediscovery was a dramatic, complex, and transformative period. It began with the awestruck gaze of the Wetherell brothers and evolved into a national conversation about science, heritage, and responsibility. It was a race against time, a struggle between curiosity, commerce, and conservation. The actions of these early explorers, archaeologists, and advocates, both their triumphs and their mistakes, shaped the future of Mesa Verde and laid the groundwork for how we study and protect our shared past today. It ensured that the silent cities in the cliffs would not be lost again, but would be preserved to share their stories for centuries to come. Thank you so much for joining me on this journey back in time. If you found this story as fascinating as I do, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel for more deep dives into history's hidden corners. We'll see you in the next one. Imagine, for a moment, You're standing at the edge of a deep canyon. The sun warms your face. The air is crisp. And below you, nestled into the rock itself, is a city. A silent, ancient city carved from sandstone. This isn't a fantasy. It's Mesa Verde. But this incredible window into the past almost didn't survive for us to see. How did this treasure, teetering on the brink of destruction, become the first national park of its kind in the world? This is the story of the birth of Mesa Verde National Park, a tale of discovery, conflict, and the passionate fight to save a nation's soul. Our story really kicks into high gear in the late 1800s. The ancestral Puebloan cliff dwellings of Mesa Verde had been largely undisturbed for centuries, known mostly to the local Ute and Navajo people. But as American settlers pushed westward, word of Tesa's cities in the sky began to spread. The first widely publicized discovery was by the Wetherell family, local ranchers who were guided to the sites by Ute guides. In December of 1888, Richard Wetherell and his brother-in-law, Charlie Mason, were tracking stray cattle through the snow when they stumbled upon what we now know as Cliff Palace. Can you even imagine that moment? Peering over the canyon edge and seeing not just a few small structures, but an entire complex, a breathtaking village frozen in time. The Wetherells were captivated. They spent years exploring the mesas, uncovering hundreds of sites, including other major dwellings like Spruce Tree House and Balcony House. They weren't trained archaeologists, but they had an insatiable curiosity. They collected artifacts, pottery, tools, baskets, sandals, and their collection became famous. They even guided tourists and researchers through the canyons, putting Mesa Verde on the map. However, this newfound fame came at a steep price. The Wetherells, and many others who followed, weren't just exploring, they were digging. Artifacts were removed without proper documentation, sold to collectors, and shipped off to museums around the world. It was a treasure hunt, and the fragile history of Mesa Verde was being dismantled piece by piece. Walls were damaged by careless visitors, and priceless objects were lost forever. The very people who revealed Mesa Verde to the world were also contributing to its slow destruction. This is where a remarkable woman enters our story. Virginia in 1887, a year before the Wetherell's famous discovery, McClurg, a journalist from New York, was guided to some of the cliff dwellings. She was horrified by the vandalism and looting she witnessed. She saw graffiti on ancient walls and watched as visitors casually pocketed artifacts. Unlike the treasure hunters, McClurg saw something more profound than relics to be sold. She saw a cultural heritage, a story that belonged to all Americans, and indeed, to all of humanity. She knew that if nothing was done, this story would be erased. Inspired and infuriated, McClurg dedicated her life to protecting Mesa Verde. She became a tireless advocate, lecturing across the country, writing articles, and using her powerful connections to raise awareness. She understood that simply asking people to be respectful wasn't enough. The site needed official, legal protection. In 1900, she founded the Colorado Cliff Dwellings Association. This group of determined women, armed with knowledge and passion, became a formidable lobbying force. They drafted legislation, petitioned lawmakers, and waged a public relations war to save the ruins. Their original goal was ambitious: to have Mesa Verde declared a woman's national park, managed and protected by their association. It was a radical idea for the time, but it shows just how dedicated they were. While McClurg and her association were building momentum in the public sphere, another key figure was working behind the scenes. His name was Edgar Lee Hewitt, an archaeologist and educator who was deeply concerned about the scientific loss occurring at Mesa Verde and other sites across the Southwest. Hewitt saw these places not as tourist curiosities, but as invaluable archaeological records. He knew that every potsherd removed without context, every wall that crumbled, was like tearing a page out of a history book that could never be rewritten. Hewitt surveyed the lands, meticulously mapping the ruins and documenting the damage. He realized that the problem was bigger than just Mesa Verde. All across the American West, ancient sites were being plundered. This realization led to a crucial piece of legislation: the Antiquities Act of 1900, pushed forward by Hewitt and other forward-thinking preservationists. This landmark law gave the President of the United States the authority to declare historic landmarks, prehistoric structures, and other objects of historic or scientific interest as national monuments. It was the legal tool they had been desperately missing. It provided a swift and effective way to protect threatened cultural sites on federal land. The timing was perfect. The public was now aware of Mesa Verde's plight thanks to McClurg's campaign, and the government now had the power to act thanks to Hewitt's advocacy for the Antiquities Act. The stage was set for a final push. There was intense debate in Washington. Some argued the land was more valuable for ranching or mining. Others questioned the federal government's right to cordon off such a large area. The debate even caused a split between our two heroes. Virginia McClurg, still hoping for a park managed by her association, sometimes found herself at odds with Hewitt, who pushed for federal control under the Department of the Interior to ensure scientific standards. Despite these disagreements, the ultimate goal was shared. They both knew the clock was ticking. Finally, on June 29, 1906, their collective efforts paid off. President Theodore Roosevelt, a passionate conservationist, signed a bill creating Mesa Verde National Park. It was a monumental victory, but what made it truly historic was the reason for its creation. Yellowstone had been created to protect natural wonders, geysers, and canyons. Sequoia was created to protect giant trees. But Mesa Verde was different. Its founding charter explicitly stated it was created to preserve the works of man. It was the first national park in the United States, and likely the world, established to protect and celebrate human history and cultural heritage. The creation of the park wasn't the end of the story, but a new beginning. It marked a profound shift in how America viewed its own history. It was a declaration that the story of the continent didn't begin in 1492. But stretched back for millennia. It acknowledged the incredible achievements of the indigenous peoples who built these magnificent structures. The new park faced challenges. Of course, early budgets were small, and the task of stabilizing hundreds of fragile ruins was immense. But the foundation was laid. The looting stopped, and the era of scientific preservation, stabilization, and interpretation began. Today, when you walk the paths of Mesa Verde, you are walking in the footsteps of not just the Ancestral Puebloans, but also the determined pioneers of preservation. You are witnessing the legacy of the Wetherell's complicated discovery, the fierce advocacy of Virginia McClurg and her army of women, and the scientific foresight of Edgar Lee Hewitt. Their struggle ensured that this silent, oin-spearing city in the cliffs would not be lost to time or greed, but would be preserved for us and for all future generations to learn from and wonder at. It stands as a powerful testament to the idea that our shared history is a treasure worth fighting for. Thank you so much for joining me on this journey back in time. If you found this story as inspiring as I do, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel for more explorations into our incredible past. Let me know in the comments what you think is the most fascinating part of Mesa Verde's origin story. Until next time, stay curious. Welcome back to our journey through time. In our last chapters, we marveled at ancient homes, uncovering the secrets of those who lived within their walls. But today, we face a pressing question. How do we ensure these irreplaceable treasures survive for future generations to admire? This is the story of protecting our ancient homes. These structures, having withstood centuries, even millennia, are now facing their greatest threats. It's a silent, relentless battle fought on multiple fronts. One of the most formidable adversaries is nature itself. Wind and rain, the same elements that shape the landscapes around these homes, are now slowly erasing them. Think of coastal ruins, where every crashing wave carries away a piece of history, or desert dwellings, where sandstorms relentlessly scour ancient carvings, softening their sharp, deliberate lines into vague suggestions of what once was. Then there's the slow, insidious creep of erosion. Water seeps into tiny cracks in stone, freezes, expands, and pries apart massive blocks that have stood for ages. Plant roots, in their quiet search for sustenance, can dismantle foundations with surprising strength. It's a constant, patient assault, and without intervention, these magnificent structures would simply crumble back into the earth from which they were built. But the threats aren't just from the natural world. In a strange twist of irony, our own love for these places can be one of their biggest dangers. We call it over. Imagine thousands of feet walking over a delicate mosaic floor every single day. The collective weight and friction wear it down far faster than centuries of disuse ever could. The oils from our hands, left behind as we touch a cool stone wall for a connection to the past, can accumulate and permanently discolor ancient surfaces. Even the moisture from our breath can alter the delicate microclimate inside a painted tomb, encouraging the growth of mold that can destroy priceless frescoes. This creates a profound dilemma for preservationists. How do you share these wonders with the world without letting the world's adoration destroy them? It's a delicate balance between curiosity and conservation. To lock these sites away entirely would be to deny humanity a vital connection to its shared heritage. But to open them without limits would be to condemn them to a slow, certain demise. So, what are we doing about it? The field of modern preservation is a fascinating blend of ancient crafts and cutting-edge science. Conservators are like historical detectives and surgeons rolled into one. They might use ground-penetrating radar to map what lies beneath a site without ever digging a single hole, preserving the integrity of the archaeological layers. They analyze the original mortars used by ancient builders, sometimes rediscovering forgotten recipes, to create a compatible material for repairs that won't damage the original structure. In areas prone to earthquakes, engineers devise ingenious, often invisible, reinforcement systems that help ancient walls absorb seismic shocks. Drones fly over vast, hard-to-reach sites, capturing incredibly detailed 3D models. These models not only document the site in its current state for posterity, but also allow experts to spot subtle new crack, a slight bulge in a wall that could signal an impending problem long before it's visible to the naked eye. When it comes to weather, the solutions can be just as innovative. Special chemical consolidants, which are breathable and reversible, are sometimes applied to fragile stone to help it resist water and wind erosion. In some cases, entire structures are covered by protective shelters, engineered to shield them from the elements while still allowing air to circulate and visitors to experience the site. And what about the challenge of This is where the balance becomes a careful dance. Many famous sites now use a ticketing system to limit the number of visitors per day. This reduces physical strain on the site and also improves the experience for those who do visit, allowing them to connect with the place without being lost in a crowd. Another powerful tool is the creation of the famous Chauvet and Lascaux caves in France, home to some of humanity's oldest and most spectacular art, are a prime example. The original caves are now sealed to the public to preserve their fragile environment, but nearby, meticulous, full-scale replicas have been created, allowing millions to experience the awe of the original paintings without causing any harm. It's a brilliant compromise, satisfying our curiosity while ensuring the real thing survives. Education is perhaps the most powerful tool of all. When we visit these places, we're not just tourists. We are temporary custodians. Simple signs asking us not to touch, to stay on designated paths, and to not use flash photography aren't just arbitrary rules. They are essential instructions for helping protect these sites. When we understand why these rules exist, that the flash from our camera can fade ancient pigments, that straying from the path can crush unseen archaeology, we are more likely to become partners in preservation. Ultimately, protecting these ancient homes is a responsibility that falls to all of us. It requires the dedication of scientists, the skill of craftspeople, the wisdom of governments, and the conscious effort of every single person who steps foot on historic ground. These structures are not just piles of old stone and wood. They are libraries of human experience, holding the stories of our ancestors, their struggles, their triumphs, and their daily lives. They are a physical link to who we were, and they help us understand who we are today. By balancing our desire to see and learn with our duty to protect, we can ensure that these windows into the past remain open for countless future generations to gaze through, to learn from, and to be inspired by. The battle is ongoing, but with a combination of respect, science, and shared responsibility, it's a battle we can win. Thank you so much for joining me on this important part of our journey. If you found this interesting, please consider liking the video and subscribing to the channel. It really helps us continue to bring these stories to you. We'll see you in the next chapter. As our journey through these ancient cliffs draws to a close, let's take a moment. Just stand here with me and listen. Can you hear it? It's not just the wind you hear. whistling through these stone doorways and empty windows. It's something more. It's the echo of footsteps, thousands of them, padding softly on this very ground over centuries. It's the whisper of voices, stories told, songs sung, children laughing. Close your eyes. Imagine the sun setting, casting long, dancing shadows across this plaza. The air, now cool and crisp, would have been thick with the smell of wood smoke. Look over there, in that corner, Kiva. Picture the warm, orange glow spilling out from the hearth, a single, flickering flame pushing back the immense darkness of the canyon. Inside, families would gather, their faces illuminated by the fire, sharing the day's successes, its challenges, its small joys. You can almost feel the warmth on your own skin, can't you? This wasn't just a shelter. This was a home, a vibrant community, teeming with life. Every single stone you see was placed by hand. Every worn-down path was carved by generations of feet walking to the stream for water or up to the mesa tops to tend their crops. Think about the sheer effort, the dedication. They didn't just build houses. They sculpted a life for themselves, in harmony with this formidable landscape. They understood the rhythms of the sun, the moon, and the seasons in a way we can barely comprehend. Look at the walls. See the handprints pressed into the mortar. They're right there. These aren't just marks. They're signatures. A father teaching his son how to build. A mother steadying herself as she plastered a wall, perhaps with a baby strapped to her back. Each print is a direct, physical connection to a person who lived, breathed, and dreamed right here. It's their way of saying, I was here. We were here. The people who built this place are long gone. We call them the Ancestral Puebloans, a name that speaks of reverence and a deep past. Why they left is one of the great mysteries that hangs in the air here. Was it drought? Conflict? A spiritual calling to move on? We may never know for sure, but in their leaving, they didn't take everything. They left behind this incredible testament to their ingenuity, their resilience, and their spirit. They left behind a message, etched not in words, but in stone and space. It's a message about community. Look how the dwellings are clustered together, interconnected. No single home stands alone. They were a people who relied on each other, who understood that survival, and indeed, prosperity, came from unity. They shared resources, protected one another, and celebrated life's milestones together. In our modern world of digital connections and physical distance, there's a powerful lesson in that. It's also a message about our connection to the natural world. They didn't seek to dominate the landscape. They became part of it. They built their homes into the protective embrace of the cliffs, osing the Soon's path to warm them in winter and the shade of the overhang to cool them in summer. They knew where the water flowed, which plants could heal, and how to read the stars. They remind us that we are not separate from nature, but intrinsically woven into its fabric. We are custodians of this planet, just as they were custodians of this canyon. As the light fades and the first stars begin to appear in the vast, dark sky above the canyon rim, the silence deepens, but it's not an empty silence. It's a silence full of stories. It's the quiet contemplation of an elder looking out over the world. It's the hushed excitement of young lovers meeting in a hidden corner. It's the peaceful slumber of a village at rest, safe within the rock. The wind picks up again, and this time it sounds like a melody, a timeless song played on the stone flutes of these ancient rooms. It carries the echoes of the ancestors. It tells us that while civilizations may rise and fall, and people may move on, the human spirit endures. The drive to create, to connect, to find meaning, and to leave something behind for those who come after that is a thread that connects us directly to the hands that built this place so long ago. We came here as visitors, as observers of a history preserved in stone. But if we've listened closely, we leave us something more. We leave us carriers of their story. We carry the echo of the wind through the stone rooms, the memory of the flicker of ancient fires, and the weight of their timeless message. A message of resilience, of community, and of a deep and abiding respect for the earth that sustains us all. This place asks us a question. What will we build? What legacy will we leave behind? What echoes will our lives leave for future generations to find? The ancestors have shown us what is possible. Now, it's our turn to answer. Thank you so much for joining me on this incredible journey. It has been an absolute honor to share this space and these stories with you. If this exploration moved you, please consider liking this video and subscribing to the channel. It truly helps us continue to bring these amazing histories to life. Until next time, keep exploring, keep listening, and keep wondering.